Hello and welcome. I'm Adri Gregan, and I am back with another live stream. Today we are finally going to be addressing the red button, blue button debate, the dilemma, however you want to call it, and that'll be the centerpiece of this stream. Now, this is going to be a lot more interactive than the previous ones. I'm going to be doing a lot of back and forth, but I also have materials prepared here, as you can clearly see. But before we get into it, if you guys don't mind just waiting just a minute, we're going to let people trickle on in, and I'm also going to get some tea because my tea is currently brewing. So I'm going to be right back and give people a second to come on in. Alrighty, I'm back. Hey. I've got my tea. Some of my tea is actually still brewing, so I'll be there in just a little bit, or I'll be pouring it in there. But I decided to prepare 2 cups today because today's going to be quite a fun one. I'm really looking forward to it, and I hope you're looking forward to it as well. We've got a really fun topic on our hands today, and one that's been setting up for quite some time, so I hope you guys are as excited as I am. Before that, I've noticed that something seems a little strange about my setup. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. For some reason, I feel like I look a lot skinnier on here than I normally do. Not that I'm... Well, let's just leave it at that. Alrighty, so let's see. We've got Living Dog here. Awesome. Glad to see you could make it. We've got Subknown. We got JT, Mr. Light. And it looks like we've also got Ketch, who will not be typing as much today, but will be listening. I've started work on my JJK analysis. Awesome. Looking forward to that. It's definitely nice to get my thoughts down on the page. Definitely. I'm excited for that. And yes, Mr. Light, this is going to be the first time we're ever fully, properly discussing it, other than, of course, on the Discord. So we are all excited, and it's something that it's a new topic, so I know it'll be scary for some of us, but I believe we can do it. Now, I'm going to really quickly adjust this a little bit. Let's do this. I think that's what was looking a little bit off for me. So let's do this and then some of that. Let's see how that looks. I think that looks pretty good. Maybe a little like that. Little like that. Let's do that. There we go. That should look about right. I'm probably going to start working on some JJK art while listening. Some known. Awesome. Can't wait for you to share that in the Discord. And of course, List of Chicks is here. List of Chicks wasn't here for the last stream where we almost got to the red button, blue button debate, so I'm glad you could make it to this one. Some known don't really have much to add since last time. Don't worry, I've added quite a bit to this, so it won't just be the same one as last time, but we'll see how it goes. And some known showing a teaser of your art and no-brainers, that is just not a kind thing to say. How dare you say that in front of the brain himself? The big brain, even, if I would be so bold. Alright, now give me 1 sec. I'm going to transfer over this coffee so I don't spill it all over this office. I'm not back, actually. There we go. Okay, I am back for real this time. For real and for good. You're gonna have to try harder than that to get rid of me. A lot of stuff in no-brainers that is just me prepping for 312. Oh, Living Dog, I love that. This is an extraordinarily new topic. I love that. Let me disable this just for a second, because one thing I keep forgetting I should be doing for these streams is I need to move my thingamajigger over here. I know that means very much to you guys. Where's the... Hold on. How do I... Coming. There we go. I'm moving my stream, my live streaming panel over to the... Actually, instead of doing that, I could just do this. Pretty sure there's a dock for that. YouTube live control panel. Here we go. It wants me to sign in. Come on, really? Forget that. I'm just gonna move the thing over. There you go. And then how do I make you right there? Bam. Wham bam. Thank you, ma'am. Restart that because you're being silly. Cool, cool, cool. Okay, that should be good. Then I can go over and check that just to make sure the stream's still working. Bam. Alrighty then. We're about 10 minutes into things, which means I think it's high time to get started. Wouldn't you all agree? So, let's get started properly, shall we? Hello and welcome. I'm Madery Gregan, and I am here to finally discuss and bring an end to the red button, blue button debate. This has been apparently going on since 2023. However, in 2026 April, so like 2 months ago, it got reposted basically, and it gained a lot of traction on Reddit. You know, the most trustworthy of sources, most reputable of locales in the internet sphere. So we are going to add our own little flavor to it, and I am going to personally bring an end to it once and for all. Yes, Unknown, almost 700 subs. I'm excited for that. It was quite a long pause at the start of the year because of certain things that happened. I didn't lose nearly as many subscribers as I was expecting to back then. I basically didn't lose any, which is phenomenal. Thank you guys so much for that. But I'm going to, yeah, I guess we're moving up forward. So I think it's like 695. We're almost at 700. Once we get to 777, we hit the not the bullseye, but we hit the jackpot. I think that's the last funny number until we reach the big 4 digits, the 4-digit club, the 3-0 club. So I'm so excited for that. That's so phenomenal. The fact that we're not even like a year into this and there's already so many people who are following along is just incredible. So yeah, thank you all. And if you're watching on YouTube, thank you as well. And consider subscribing if you haven't already. Why did I say watching on YouTube? Everyone's watching on YouTube. This is being live streamed on YouTube. On that topic, I've considered switching over to Switch for the live streams. I don't think I will for these weekly ones. I might do it for like the impromptu Pokemon streams, but I think for these weekly ones, I will keep doing it on here just because on YouTube, I like how there's a separate like tab for the live streams, just the live ones, and that way I don't have to make like a second channel for it. Though I guess if I do that for the impromptu streams anyways, I can do that. It's just tough because the original reason why I decided to do it on YouTube as opposed to Twitch was because I wanted people to like get the notification and to see the video coming up and just to watch it live and be notified that way, because most people don't see my posts for one reason or another. So my original thought was, oh, I should do it on YouTube. That way people can like see it because it shows up in your subscriber feed, right? Like a regular video if I'm live streaming. However, it doesn't seem like that's turned out to be the case. Most of my streams, like, I rarely get even into the double digits, let alone to like the amount you'd expect from like a lot of casual view or a lot of like regular viewers watching my channel to watch my streams. So I don't think most people are like just really caring enough to go ahead and watch it. So with that in mind, like the only people who really show up to these, especially regularly, are the regulars. So I was thinking that I might just switch over to Twitch anyways, because the main benefit of being on YouTube is kind of lost if like a lot of people like in my subscriber base just aren't clicking on it. Yeah, Living Dog. Most of the regular commenters watch the streams, and those people are like on the Discord anyways. So whether I'm on YouTube or Twitch, like you guys will still show up, right? If you're available. So I might as well do Twitch and just have the greater exposure, because obviously Twitch is a lot better at advertising live streams than YouTube. Some people have theorized that's because YouTube actually doesn't want live streaming to really catch on, so it doesn't really present it very much to like people. But YouTube is better for like VODs, right? Twitch is obviously the dedicated streaming platform, so I might switch it over to Twitch moving forward. We will have to see. And then I guess if I do that, I'll have a second channel dedicated to the VODs. And we'll see how that goes. So yeah, Mr. Light is worth trying at least. Yeah, that's what I think. I think for the next stream and potentially moving forward, I'll switch over to Twitch. This might be the last one I do live on YouTube. Some known regulars show. Oh man, that was one of my favorite shows as a child. And even now, like I don't watch it anymore, of course. It's not ongoing anymore, but Regular Show and Adventure Time are like the two shows that like were my childhood, my like late childhood. I absolutely love those cartoons. They were and honestly still are incredible. There is more Regular Show now, really. It's not still ongoing, right? I could have sworn it ended. Or did it get like a reboot or something? I think they recently released more episodes. Lost Tapes, I think they're called. Well, if that's the case, then that's really exciting. I've definitely got to check that out because oh, Regular Show is so much fun. It's such a great show, isn't it? If you haven't seen it, go ahead and watch it. It's you're not going to regret it. But okay, so it's 1:47. Given 15 minutes for everyone to show up, I'm going to go ahead and get started, and we're going to do this officially and properly. So first things first, I'm going to read out the original post that basically brought this thing back to the forefront, brought this back into the internet discussion, the debate boards, basically. And Alex is here. Awesome. Glad you could make it. I was hoping you would be able to make it because I did move it over to the Sunday time slot so you'd have a better chance of watching it as opposed to Saturday. So if you don't show up, you make the whole thing pointless. I'm half joking, of course. So that's another thing I could experiment with these streams. I could try doing it on like Saturday at like 1:30. I think 1:30 is a pretty good time slot because people seem to like noon for Sunday. For Saturday, they liked mornings. But I wanted to do a little bit after noon because I didn't want to do it at noon when like a lot of people haven't had lunch yet. And I guess you can always watch the stream as you're eating lunch, but I figured I'd give them a little time to like eat lunch and settle down for the afternoon and do it then. So I don't know. Maybe we'll have more discussions about that in the maybe we'll have more discussions in the Discord about like whether we do Saturday or Sunday and like what time we do it. But we'll see. Well, it's a work in progress, right? It's all a work in progress. Oh, it's voting day today for my country, Alex. Really? That's awesome. That's really cool. And your country, oh my god, I don't know the Latin Americas. You weren't Peru, were you? I'm I'm sorry, Alex. I'm totally blanking right now. At least it isn't into the AM for me for some known. Yeah, okay. Yes, it is. Okay, cool. Awesome. Voting for Peru. That's great. All right, well, I don't know. I feel like I shouldn't say good luck for that. uh, yeah, I guess go ahead and make sure you vote out there because, yeah, that's important. And it is, right? Because one thing about politics is that we often think that like our votes don't matter and things don't really matter. And unless you're in America, that's generally not true. Your votes do matter because things that seem insufficient are what change the world if enough people do it. One of my brother's favorite quotes is that the world changes when everyone does what they deem to be insufficient. So if you want the world to change, do what you know isn't enough. And once everyone starts doing what they know isn't enough, suddenly it becomes enough. And as you may be suspecting, that is my segue into the blue button, red button debate. Red button, blue button debate. Because, well, I can't say because quite yet. We'll talk about that in a second. We'll talk about how that relates to this whole thing in due time. But we are going to go into this thing, and I'm going to basically lay it out for you. I'm going to read this whole thing, assuming you are going into this with no knowledge. Living Dog. Americans vote not mattering is blackpilled. While the Democrats are capitalist socially, they're more left, so I can't really agree with the sentiment. yeah, Living Dog called me out. Yeah, that was a joke, obviously. Your vote does matter in America. It's kind of a joke and it feels like it doesn't matter because, you know, the whole thing about districting and about the electoral college and all that stuff, for certain people it really feels like your vote doesn't matter, but I think what's more important to discuss is not whether your vote matters, but whether your voice matters, right? Because you can do so much more politically than vote. You can go out and you can cold call, you can go knock on doors, you can support people, you can do all these things, right? And even if your vote didn't matter, raising awareness does matter. So it's, like you said, very black pilled, and it makes enough sense on the surface to convince people like, oh, you're right, I shouldn't vote. But it really is just an excuse not to take part in this, right? Looks like we've got Unwarner here. Green sounds better, not gonna lie. Green sounds better for what? Are you talking about are you trying to find a third green button? Or not? Because if there's a green button, I'd love to hear about that, but I don't think I've heard of a green button yet. Not yet, anyways. Retro Capital is here. Awesome. You caused me to cut my cheek while I was shaving, which made me drop an electric advice in my bathtub, which caused a fire and led to my family being burnt. Thanks a lot. You're welcome. So the red button, blue button debate, it started back in 2023. Is that like the earliest case that at least I could see about it? And it didn't really gain a lot of popularity. The most popularity it gained was really in 2026 of April, like I said before, when Tim Urban made this post. I think it was on Reddit, or it might be on Twitter, the website formerly known as Twitter. And I don't know, I don't use either. I think it looks like Twitter. So they made a post here, and it frames it as such. Everyone in the world has to take a private vote by pressing a red or a blue button. If more than 50% of people press the blue button, everyone survives. If less than 50% of people press the blue button, only people who press the red button survive. Which button would you press? Now, this is... okay, yeah, just Twitter. This is the initial post for this latest outbreak, if you would. This was in April of 2026, and this is what caused it to basically go viral in recent months. So, for all intents and purposes, this is the baseline question. Now, we will get into this in the future, that this is not actually the original post. It's not the original framing. It's a little bit of foreshadowing for what's coming next. But this is basically what we have to work off of, and what most people are working off of as their initial entry into this dilemma, if you would. The third button is purple. Gojo made it. Well, of course Unknown. He made all three. What are you talking about? The green is fifth after yellow, followed by 6, another shade of purple. Okay, Unknown. You know what? I'm just gonna take your word for it. You kind of lost me there, but take your word for it. Listen, chicks, Kenjaku, why did you spit on me and punch me in the teeth when we met at Chicago? First of all, I haven't lived in Chicago in quite a while, so either you're bringing up a case that has long since expired and has no criminal liability for me, or you're just making stuff up. And I don't appreciate that, okay? If you were a few feet closer, you'd be sorry. So, let's get into the red button, blue button debate, shall we? And we're going to be starting off by talking about the good of both sides. So, what are the good? Well, first, the red button. Now, the red button, the greatest benefit is, of course, that it's red, right? Red's a pretty freaking awesome color. I think most of us can agree. I like red, you like red, we all like red. Our blood is red, we're made of red. So, red's a pretty good reason to choose the red button just on its own, but it's not the only reason. Because red is also very logical. With the red button, you have a 100% chance of survival, right? Excuse me. You have a 100% chance of survival with the red button. You literally cannot lose. If everybody presses the red button, you survive. If everyone but you presses the blue button, you survive. It's only logical in terms of like survival, right? There's no reason not to. And lastly, it is the safe option. Like I said, there is a 0% chance of you dying. With the blue button, there is always going to be some risk of less than 50% of people pressing the blue button. So red button is just safe. You just survive. And bada bing, bada boom, it doesn't matter what everyone did. I'm doing my own thing and I'm getting out of this okay. As a living dog might put it, it's insurance. But what about the blue button? Well, the blue button is, of course, blue. Blue is a phenomenal color. It's one of the only colors that doesn't really appear in nature, and yet the greatest expanse of any color you will ever see in your life is going to be blue. Look at the sky. Look at the ocean. Look at your midlife crisis. It's blue all the way down. So blue is a pretty great reason to choose the blue button, just because blue is pretty freaking awesome. It's also a very considerate choice. Blue button is trying to save the people who are choosing blue, right? It's trying to save everybody, rather. It's not just thinking, oh, the people who pick blue will die if not less than 51% of people do it. It's, oh, unless 100% of people pick red, there's going to be some people dying. So I'm going to be considerate, and I'm going to help weigh the scales on the side of blue instead of red. Lastly, blue is very hopeful. It's optimistic, right? You are taking the risk. There is a non-zero chance of blue losing, right? And in that case, only red survive. However, if you are picking blue, not only are you trying to weigh the scale towards everyone surviving with blue, you are effectively taking a stance that you believe enough people will pick blue to survive, right? You believe that enough people will go ahead and choose this one. Otherwise, I mean, if you didn't believe that, then it'd basically just be a sacrifice for the sake of nothing, right? For the sake of looking cool. I don't think very many people are picking blue with that in mind. I think they're picking blue because they believe that they can actually, whether they can influence or not, they believe enough people will pick blue to save it, and they wouldn't be a part of that. So it's a very hopeful take. Okay, so we went over the good of the red and the blue. Let's go over the bad now, because there's a lot of bad. First of all, starting with the red button again. The red button is a very cold option, right? It's very distant. It's very separated from ethics, I suppose. With the red button, you are basically saying, I only care if I survive. I'm not going to weigh the scale towards everyone surviving with blue. I'm picking my survival. I'm picking myself, and I don't really care what happens to the other people. And, I mean, you do you, I guess, but you can't really deny, whether you choose it or not, that there is a coldness to it. There is a distance to other people, to survival. And there's also a cynicism. With the red button, you are effectively admitting that you believe that blue's not going to win. And even if you think there is a small chance of blue not winning, so you're going to pick the red anyways, just so you survive to get rid of that tiny chance you die, well, what happens? Or even if you pick it like that, you are still silently admitting that I'm going to pick red. It's cynical. It's people aren't going to pick blue. People are going to take care of themselves. So people pick red, and you pick red because I don't want to die. That sounds pretty cynical to me. Finally, it's quite arrogant. Picking the red button is very often tied to a belief that the red button is the correct answer, that blue button people are stupid because you can't die pressing the red button, so everyone should just pick the red button. So there often turns this into it often morphs into an elitism, a feeling that blue people deserve to die, that the Smurfs have it coming to them, that Dabu Dee Dabu Die really is about dying. So good riddance, right? It's Darwinism at its finest. Natural selection. I'm going to pick red. I'm a survivor. Everyone who deserves to live will pick red. I don't know about you, but that sounds kind of arrogant. You're making an awful lot of assumptions. So there's a lot of bad to the red button. Now, before we go on to the blue, let me see, there's some things going on in the comments here. Living Dog still with the, what if we make a purple button because purple's the most aesthetically pleasing color? Well, I don't think you're necessarily wrong, and I think you can tell by most of this. There's quite a lot of purple in here, so I think we can all agree that purple's a pretty nice color. Purple's pretty awesome. So you know what, I'm on board with that one. Sumknown is dropping another lyrical analysis in the haiku corner. Awesome, I'm looking forward to that. Someone close to my username, cool. JT likes purple as well, awesome. Yep, Sumknown, we're all getting purple with this one, awesome. Maybe we should just, what if we press the red and the blue button at the same time? Maybe that'll create a purple singularity, and then everyone dies? I don't know. Maybe that's what happens. If everyone presses both buttons, then just everyone dies. That's just how that works. That's a secret third option. And of course, Sumknown, does nobody listen to Takaba? Red is prohibited. Kinshi. Yes, so we have to pick blue if we're going to listen to the greatest goat, Takaba himself. Ooh, Mr. Light coming in with an actual comment on this. Collaboration is vital to the survival to many species, including humans, so red is clearly not pure Darwinism. In that regard, yes. What I'm saying about Darwinism, more specifically the aspect of survival of the fittest, it is the idea that the weak will bottleneck themselves, right? They will weed themselves out. I'm referring to the fact that a lot of people who pick red think that the people who pick blue are stupid, right? They're suicidal. They're not clever enough to realize that red is the right answer. So from that perspective, it's just Darwin doing his thing, right? It's survival of the fittest. It's you weren't smart enough to realize red is the only correct choice, so you deserve to be weeded out of the gene pool. On the other hand, yes, that's true. If you actually think from a species perspective, then yeah, Darwinism would actually favor the blue because it favors people working together and helping each other out. Because humans are incredibly weak on their own, right? We can't really do very much on our own, so we kind of need other people, which means helping each other out is very evolutionarily advantageous. So yeah, the blue button is Darwinism, right? You'd want them that population to survive. So yeah, it actually can go both ways. But I'm getting ahead of myself, Mr. Light, with your comment. I had to reply to that, but yeah, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Right now, we're just bringing out the framing, and we're bringing out the different sides, the goods and the bad. So we'll get deeper into the what I actually believe and what I think are kind of fallacies in a minute. But first, we need to talk about the blue button. Now, what's bad about the blue button? Obviously, it's foolish, right? As we've said, the blue button is I'm picking this with a chance of dying. I am literally taking a chance of dying when there is potentially zero chance of dying. So there is a foolishness here of stepping into the wood chipper, right? Again, we'll get to framing in a minute, but there is this feeling of suicidality, if you would, if YouTube gods won't strike me down for saying such a thing, to picking blue. It is a foolish endeavor. It also comes across as very self-gratifying. Now, I like to liken this to politics. And I think the irony is not lost on me, nor is it lost on probably any of you, that the red and the blue are very conspicuously chosen, aren't they? I don't know if this like applies outside of America, but at least in America, there is a feeling that's like, this feels kind of pointed. Blue trying to save other people, red trying to take care of yourself first and foremost. Where have I seen this before, and where have I seen them exactly applying to the colors here? So, without touching on that directly, like, there is some, in the political aspect, blue, liberal, and like progressivism, there is a self-gratification, right? And I'm not saying like this is the case, this is the problem with progressivism. I'm saying that this is a common thread. Just like in conservative spaces, there is a certain paranoia that is sort of innately attached to a lot of these beliefs. With progressivism, there is a self-gratification. There's a feeling of doing the right thing, of having the moral high ground. Does that make those things wrong? No. You could feel like you have the moral high ground, maybe you actually do. But you could also feel like you have the moral high ground and not actually have it. You could be deluding yourself. There's no real way of knowing for sure, but what I do know for sure is that there is a level of self-gratification to blue. Whether that's actually wrong or not is a different matter entirely. It's just a fact that there is. Lastly, of course, blue button is dangerous. Not to other people, it is dangerous to yourself because of that chance of dying, right? Kind of obvious. I don't want to live in a world full only of people who would pick red. Picking red leads to living with a bunch of annoying libertarians I don't want to survive. Catch, that's quite the statement. Not one I don't understand, though. That is really interesting. The idea that... Actually, before I get to that, it looks like we've also got Shadow Monarch here. I have no clue what's happening, so I assume you haven't heard of the red button, blue button debate. You are a regular here, though, so I'm going to go back real quick, actually, and we're going to come back here in a sec, just so you can get caught up, Shadow Monarch. This is the red button, blue button debate, and stop me if you've heard this before. But basically, everyone is taken into like private rooms where you get to choose a red button or a blue button. Now, according to this post, which is the one that made this go viral in April of 2026, if more than 50% of people press the blue button, everyone survives. If less than 50% of people press the blue button, only people who press the red survive. Which button do you press? So what I've covered so far is that the red button has a 100% chance of survival, right? No matter who presses what, red, you survive. With the blue, no matter who press it, with the blue, at least more than half of everyone has to press the blue. Otherwise, everyone from blue dies. So blue is saving other people, red is basically saving yourself, for certain. So the goods of the red are that it's red, it's very logical, it's very about self-surviving, and it's very safe. You can't lose with red. With blue, it's very considerate, because you're trying to save people pick blue, right? You're trying to be part of the 50% who can pick blue to save everybody. It's very hopeful because you probably assume the good in people, that empathy will win out and they'll choose it. Otherwise, you're just basically ending your own life for nothing. And then we got to the bad here, and that's where we are now. The red button is very cold, cynical, and arrogant. Blue button is foolish, self-gratifying, and dangerous. Shadow Monarch, I've seen a video about this. Okay, good. Okay, so you're passingly familiar with it. Hopefully that quick recap got you kind of up to speed to where we are. And yeah, we just went over the good and the bad, so we're going to move on from there in just a second. If you have any questions, also with any uncertainties, go ahead, leave it there, and we'll clarify for you. Retro, as I was told last stream, my PFP is blue, so I choose blue. That's true. Your profile pick is blue, so you were going to pick blue all along. and Mr. Lightdown's on, and because Yuji would choose blue. So I've got to go with Yuji's option. Okay, now Ketch. Your comment, I don't want to live in a world full of only people who would pick red. Picking red leads to living with a bunch of annoying libertarians I don't want to survive. So we'll get into that more in a little bit. However, I also should bring up the fact that there's a lot of suppositions, right? With your statement, there is the assumption that, and it's a fair assumption, it's not unfair, especially since so far in my presentation, I've explicitly gone out of my way to point out these sort of straw men, these hyper extreme examples of the good and the bad, of the red and the blue. But in reality, it's not so simple, right? I said red button is arrogant, but I also said it is common that people who pick red button believe that blue deserves to die. You know, it's common that they may have similar, like, conservative beliefs. It's common, let me scooch up a little bit. It's common, but it's not guaranteed, right? So while your fear is, like, somewhat, it is definitely fair that you don't want to live in a world full of people who pick red, so you want to help keep the blue people alive. I think there is an assumption that you're holding that you maybe shouldn't, that the people who pick red are these callous, cynical, arrogant people. Because a lot of them, just ask Living Dog, that a lot of them is just about shirts. It's just about surviving. And there's nothing wrong with survival. There's nothing wrong with wanting to live no matter what. But I definitely do see where you're coming from with that. Why don't we just LARP a degree in psychology so we can force people to choose blue? I was about to get a degree in psychology. I've kind of stepped back from it due to certain life circumstances happening. But Living Dog. I was just watching in the background. Now Ketch says he doesn't want to live in a world full of people with my beliefs. Damn, bro. Or maybe it's the annoying libertarians he doesn't want to live with. Yeah, I don't think it's actually about I don't want to live in a world full of libertarians or conservatives or whatever. It's I don't want to live in a world full of people who are self-interested, right? I think that's what Ketch is trying to say. And I think most of us, to a large degree, can agree with that. We don't really want to live in a world full of people who are only really care about themselves and don't give a hoot about anyone else. But also, in Ketch's defense, if I had to live in a world full of living dogs, I think I'd press the blue button too. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. Oh my god, some known. Using the practical definition of pragmatism that is entirely based on framing, meaning there is no truly practical choice. Too many pras. List of chicks. Blue is killing yourself and others because they also kill yourself by trying to save you. Yeah, so List of Chicks is bringing out the red argument. We will get into that in a little bit. Don't you worry about that. However, like I said with Ketch, there's a lot of assumptions that you're making that I think are a little bit unfair to be making because they're things that you can't really know for sure. You have a little more confidence than you should in a lot of things. Oof, retro. Hopefully I get to choose blue and everyone chooses red. I got 2 exams tomorrow. That is so real. That is so real. Godspeed, retro. Exactly, some known. I just want to sleep and finish Cowboy Bebop, man. Retro. Again, I agree with you. I actually haven't finished Cowboy Bebop yet. I think I'm like 4 episodes from the end, and I've been there for like several years now. It's ridiculous. Alex dropping the big words. Red is apparently egoism, objectivism, and Machiavellian realism. Very fun. Objectivism by Ayn Rand. Philosophy holds that selfishness is virtue and that the moral end of a person's life is the pursuit of their own happiness and survival. Fair enough. Yeah, in what ways of objectivism? I'm not that familiar with it. Interesting. Okay, catch clarifying. I would suppose the more nuanced version of my statement is I don't want to live in a low trust society, which is also fair, right? It doesn't just have to be people who like only care about themselves, right? Or people who are arrogant towards the blue button. A lot of people who pick red are also people who don't have faith that the blue button will win, right? Which I assume is what you mean by a low trust society. It's people who like, I want to pick blue, but I don't think they'll actually win. I don't really trust the people around me to pick blue, so I'm going to pick red. And yeah, that's true. If not enough people pick blue and only red button people survive, then the world becomes full of people who, let's charitably call them cautious. Yeah. There are a lot more words we could use than that, but that's a charitable word to use. So yeah, I definitely see the merits to that way of thinking, that fear. I almost spilled my tea over myself. That would not have been good to anything. Retro's asking about my favorite cartoon as a kid. Weren't you here for the beginning of this? I already told you. Adventure Time and a regular show, obviously. It's not even close. Chowder was also quite good, though. The original Teen Titans, Codename Kids Next Door. There's Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. There are a lot of good ones. I was a Cartoon Network kid, in case you couldn't tell. Shadow Monarch. So if everyone presses the red button, then everyone survives. Yes. There is an asterisk to that, and I will add that in a second. And it's about framing. However, for the moment, yes, if everyone presses red, everyone survives. You cannot die if you press the red button. There is no danger to it whatsoever. Which is why when I was talking about the good over here, I said it is the safe option, because you can't lose. If losing is losing your life, of course. Okay, so we talked about the bad, right? We talked about the good, we talked about the bad of both sides, at least on the basic one. Some known, you're kind of ahead of ourselves. Naturally, we talked about the good and the bad, so we've got to talk about... Well, actually, before we get into that, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. There was one last bad to both of these. And that's that they are thoughtless. I'm sorry, but if you've chosen red or if you've chosen blue, if you are confident in your answer, you believe you're definitely right, you fall for this bad. You are thoughtless. And you're also thoughtless. So now that we're talking about the good and the bad, let's get into the ugly. And the ugly is basically going to be talking about my experience. Oh, wait, nope. Oh my god. Okay, here we go. Okay. I don't know how those got there. Let's talk about the ugly, which is the real debate, right? I've presented the basics of both sides, but let's get into the actual nitty gritty. Let's hit the nitty gritty, if you would. And there's a lot of different points here, so we'll go through it slowly but surely. Of course I'm ahead. I have played these games before. Some known. You gotta stop that, man. You gotta stop looking ahead at streams that haven't happened yet. I mean, coming from the past is one thing, but coming from the future, you're gonna cause so many issues and so many... You're just gonna break space-time, man. You can't be doing that. Or at least you can't be telling about it, because then everyone's gonna start doing it, and what kind of society will we have at that point? Retro Capital, by the way, I screenshotted all those pics. I have no idea what you're talking about. Let's talk about the ugly. So I'm going to go with these one by one, and this is the part where I'm really going to start engaging a lot more with the comments. So go ahead at this point. Feel free to start bringing out your hot takes, your crazy things, and I'll engage a lot more with it, because I've laid out my frameworks, and I'm just going to start going through these points and also be here to directly respond to you and hear your takes on it also. But in the meantime, one of the things I like most about blue is that blue is very kind. It's very optimistic. It's hopeful, like I said before, right? Blue is choosing to save the people who picked blue. Excuse me. Blue is choosing to not be satisfied that only the red people survive. Blue is saying that I want everyone to live, because if 51% of people pick blue, everyone survives. So similar to Shadow Monarch, what you were saying, if everyone presses red, they all survive. Yes, but only half of people have to pick blue. And then everyone survives also, right? That seems a little bit easier if you ask me. So I like blue because I want to be a kind and optimistic person. Blue is kind and optimistic, so I would lean a little bit towards blue in that regard. However, at the same time, the red comes in and says, here's the thing though. And shout out to Living Dog. Blue carries risk, right? Red doesn't. Why is this a debate? And this goes back to what I was talking about with the fact that red can't lose. Red is the safe option. Okay, blue wants to go out and save everyone. Well, as Shadow Monarch said, why don't we all just pick red then? Why don't we all just pick the option that carries no risk? It's only self-centered if other people pick blue. If everyone picks red, then there's no self-centeredness about red. It's just the only sensible choice, right? But here's the thing. It's ironic, because the risk that blue carries is self-fulfilling. What do I mean by that? Well, what makes blue a non-zero risk, right? A non-zero chance of dying? The only predication, the only thing that leads to blue people dying is if less than 50% of people pick blue. So if more than half of all people pick red. So if you think blue carries some risk, so I'm going to pick red to be safe, you are actually making blue more risky. And that's where we get into the segue I used to get into the red button, blue button in the first place. You are adding to this risk. You are creating this self-fulfilling prophecy that blue carries risk. If everyone just goes ahead and presses blue because we all want to take care of other people, bam, everyone survives. It is your cynicism that will end up getting people killed. Right? Jeez, we got people talking about capitalism, anarcho-capitalism. Oh my goodness. You know what? I said I was going to be responding to the comments here, but it's mainly about the debate. I'm not going to get super deep into politics right now, or at least not about political science, I should say. I'm going to leave that up to you guys to debate that out all you want. What I'm more interested in is about this dilemma, specifically the counter-argument that red often brings up. Yes, blue is a self-fulfilling risk, but also blue only really looks better because of framing. What a lot of people don't really think about is the fact that if enough people, well, how do I want to say this? Let's go back to the initial framing, right? Let's go all the way back. Oh my god, why are those photos there? Let's go back to the initial framing. At least the one from 2026. The one that really popularized this. If you look at this one, there's a clear framing choice, right? The initial thing is presented as, if more than 50% of people press blue, everybody survives. If less than 50 do it, only people who press red button survive. So it frames the problem as, does everyone survive or does not everyone survive? If you pick this one, we're all good. If you pick this one, we're not all good. That's framing, right? It's framing red as the selfish choice, when I could just as easily frame it as the wood chipper. So think about it this way. Oh my god, I hate those. if let's restart with this framing. There is a wood chipper in front of everybody. If you press blue, you choose to step in the wood chipper. If you press red, you choose not to step in the wood chipper. However, if more than half of everybody steps into the wood chipper, it malfunctions and doesn't kill anybody. Which do you press? All of a sudden, by changing the framing, bam. Now blue looks stupid and red looks to be the only obvious choice. But here's the thing. That's also framing, right? So then if we flip that, we should flip this slide. And now red only looks better because of framing. And that brings in one of the more interesting things about this debate. And something that was brought up in last stream that didn't happen. The idea that there is no base case here. There is no way to present this argument, this dilemma, where you don't present red or blue first. And I have yet to see a way to present this dilemma that doesn't pose one as the bad option, or one as the better option. Our language just doesn't really have a way to do that. And due to our temporal limitations, we simply don't have a way of presenting blue and red simultaneously to a person, right? Even if I were to put it on the screen with both red and blue with their options, you only exist in the present. You have to read one before the other, right? And if you once you read one, you have a bias towards that one already. So it is physically and temporally impossible to take bias out of this. And if you look at two different versions of framing, one that makes blue look bad, one that looks at red look bad, the basic psychology says you're going to be partial to the first one you read. So you're probably going to be more partial towards whichever one that first one was. Once again, making it even harder to untangle bias out of this. Okay, Optimistic Scales is here. Welcome. What about people who wanted to pick red but picked blue? Colorblind folk, people with some sort of mental disability, or people who just for whatever reason messes up. It's a small number of the population, but they're being put to death by choosing red regardless. Optimistic Scales, that is an incredible first comment to make here, because you are touching on something really important. And that's simply the fact that it's not so simple as, are you smart or not? Are you selfish or not? Right? As you brought up, what about people who are colorblind? Yeah, they can't choose one. That kind of sucks for them, doesn't it? What about people who try to press one, but have some sort of twitching, right? They have some sort of physical or mental handicap that causes them to press the other button. What if they walk over to press the red button, they trip and press the blue button? These are the crazy ones that's you want to write off as oh, that just sucks, but you are condemning them to death by choosing the red button as the only smart choice. Meanwhile, blue is the only way to guarantee everyone survives without requiring 100% participation towards one button or the other. Blue is the only way to guarantee everyone survives. But I'm not quite done. Listen, Jix, it's not my accountability to die for other people. Again, you're assuming you'll die, which is an unfair assumption. It's not your accountability to die for other people. However, it will be your accountability for the people who died, because you chose not to weigh the scales. You chose to put risk into blue. So you get to choose the worst of the two evils there. But I'm not quite done with what Optimistic Scales brings up, because I can go even further. We don't just have to deal with colorblind people or people who have a twitch or trip or people who have some sort of mental disability or any of that stuff. We don't even have to go that far. Because we're just human. What if one of your loved ones picks the blue button? Not because they're trying to be the hero, not because they're colorblind, not because they're foolish, but simply because they didn't think about it enough. Simply because they didn't think about the fact that red is the only one that doesn't have any risk. Are you still so confident in dooming blue to die if your loved ones are picking blue suddenly, just because they haven't thought it through all the way, or they haven't thought it through as much as you have, at least in your perspective? Are you still okay with all of blue dying? Because red is a great logical choice. If everyone picks red, everyone survives. But it presents a false assumption into this hypothetical. It presents the idea that everyone will choose logically, and everyone I know will choose logically. When in truth, you're in the heat of the moment. People you love, incredibly intelligent people, incredibly logical people, might just not think of that. They might just choose blue because it feels right. And all of a sudden, you picked red, 51% of people picked red, and you've lost loved ones. Are you still okay with that? So as you can see, I kind of skipped ahead a little bit. But since we're here, I might as well touch on this final point here. Just people are just people. What I mean by that is just people, people who are focused on justice, who are trying to save everybody, are just people. So like I said before, I kind of covered it. Just people, people focused on justice, blue people, they're only people at the end of the day. It's not necessarily foolishness that made them pick red. It might just be they didn't think about it all the way, or that they are empathetic people. They're kind people. Do you really want kind people to be filtered out of our gene pool and pick red? That sounds like you're just asking to have society fall apart. Shout out to Ketch. That just sounds like you're asking to leave a world where all the kind people have been weeded out. And if that's the case, then maybe I'll pick blue anyways. Maybe I'll pick blue even if there's a big sign that says most people are picking red. Just so I don't have to live in a world where all the kind people were weeded out. There's another argument for blue. How is me dying also better than surviving? Stop making the delusional point about every vote matters. My vote won't matter with higher probability than a meteorite striking my home in 2 years. Why would you make assumptions? Lista Chicks, I'm not sure what you're trying to argue here. I'm not sure I understand your point. I can comment on the idea of a delusional point that every vote matters. Because every vote does matter in a world where there's actual voting. Now, if you live in, say, Russia, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Lizard Chicks, I think you might have actually said you do live in Russia. Now, if you live there, that might be different, because obviously Putin kind of has things rigged, right? He's basically guaranteed to keep living, assuming, again, as you mentioned here, a meteorite doesn't strike. But I would encourage you not to allow your personal situation, your environment, to affect this situation that is unrelated. This is not voting to keep Putin in charge or to get him kicked out. This is a completely separate vote where every vote genuinely matters. And I don't know how else to boil this down other than in the most basic sense. Let's not take every person in humanity. Let's take 5 people. How many people need to press blue for everyone to survive if there are 5 people? I'm not going to insult your intelligence. 3. So Listochicks, answer me this. If 3 people need to pick blue for everyone to survive, and you are one of those 5 people, does your vote matter? Statistics can seem separated from people. Statistics often makes you forget that people are still there. When you have a US presidential election, there millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people voting, it can be easy to forget that those were all individual people voting. Hi, Max. Before I continue, yes, Max, we already got the technical problem. I already brewed my tea. We had to wait a little bit, but we're all here, so we should be good. And we'll see if this is a shorter stream or not. I always say that, but I'm just going to assume it's going to be a regular 3-hour stream because that's just how things work, and that's how we do it. So here's the thing. If there are millions of people voting, if there are billions of people voting, it's easy to think that my vote won't matter because there are so many people who are going to weigh out my vote. But there's a little bit of main character. There's a little bit of a main character syndrome going on there, even if it's kind of reversed and kind of hidden. Main character syndrome, for those of you who aren't aware, is a plague infecting our society now more than ever, though it's certainly not like new to the present day. Main character syndrome is basically believing and acting like you are the main character of everyone's world, not of your life, but of everyone's life. That you get to do whatever you want in society. You get to bother other people because you are more important. That's main character syndrome. That's been lovingly dubbed recently. And normally, main character syndrome is talking about the fact that you believe you are all important, right? You are more important than everyone else. Your engagement, your fun, your life matters more than the peace of others. That's why the people who disrupt public places, claiming their free will and freedom of speech and just use that to do whatever they want, disrupt others, they don't care because they're the main character. However, it also applies to what you're mentioning, this hypercynicism. Because you are separating yourself from the other 8 billion people. You're asking how your vote matters when there are billions of other people voting. But what happens when all 8 billion people ask the same question you're asking? Or maybe not all of them. What if 7 billion people ask the same question you're asking? What's the point in voting? My vote doesn't matter. Let's go back to the American political voting, to the presidential elections. Especially regarding, like, more recent ones, and I think pretty much historically, we've never gotten... I'm pretty sure like 2/3 of the population is the vast majority of people. 2/3 of the population is like the highest rate we've ever had in an election of like turnout. And yet, with very few exceptions, presidential elections are decided by very small margins. It's like 52% to 48%. Let me ask you this. If 60% of people voting leads to a 52-48 outcome, what if that last third of the population voted on the 48? Right? You believing your vote doesn't matter is a form of main character syndrome, because you are separating yourself from everyone else. You are pretending like like everyone else won't think the same thing as you. It won't matter. My vote doesn't matter. Suddenly, billions of people are saying, my vote doesn't matter. Then their vote matters, doesn't it? It doesn't matter how big the sample size is. It doesn't matter how big the survey is. Every single survey of people is made up of people. People die when they are killed. The archer class is made of archers. It sounds obvious, but it's true. So your vote does matter. Because everyone's vote matters, literally. You cannot have these statistics without the singular people who each voted. My vote won't matter by pure chance. If people asking my question, they choose red. Here's the thing. I think what you're trying to say here is that there are a lot of people who are going to pick red anyways. But that doesn't matter. Because there are only two outcomes. There are only three outcomes where everybody survives the situation. Right? Two outcomes, sorry. Outcome one, every single person on the planet picks red. Boom, everyone survives. Or more than half of people pick blue. Those are the only two options. I hate that I can't make that hand motion anymore without ruining everyone's brains. Either of these two options has everyone survive. Anything outside of those two options leads to some people dying. So Listochicks, here's what I'm saying. If you think I might as well pick red because there are going to be people who pick red anyways, forget those people. Forget those people. Who cares if some people are going to pick red no matter what? As long as some known isn't more than half the people, which, by the way, I don't know if you're new to English, but we have a word for that. It's not called some, it's called most. But if some people pick red, that wasn't a dig at you, by the way. That was just a dig at myself for using the word some known. If some people pick red, forget them. I'm going to be part of the majority who picks blue and save everybody. So yes, your vote matters. Again, you are not participating in blue's risk, its non-zero chance of dying, becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? And if you really think your vote doesn't matter, then pick blue anyways. So unfortunately, I cannot write while listening to a live stream. I'm going to tap out and listen to the rest later. I just finished my analysis of chapter 1 of JJK0, 10 pages. Oh boy, Ketch. I'm going to join the Discord relatively soon to share it. This will be my boulder, and I will be Sisyphus. Ketch, I cannot wait to see you in Discord. I knew something was missing. I need you and Theo to join, and then we'll be complete. And I think there's a couple other people. I don't know if Shadow Monarch is part of the group, but it's okay. We're getting everyone. We're slowly getting people in the IPPC into the Discord, so join at your own rate, but I can't wait for you to be part of it because you won't regret it. It's so much fun in there. It really is. Max Godard, it is the kind of contradiction that proves the point. Similar to the only thing that tolerance can't tolerate is intolerance. Try saying that 5 times fast. But yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's... I mean, yeah. No notes. Shadow Monarch, everyone who presses blue and survives is also an option. See, that's why I initially said 3 options. However, I hate to get a little pedantic, but I've got to do it because I did it to myself. My 2 options were everyone picks red, or more than half of all people pick blue, right? So let me ask you, does everyone picking blue fall into one of those 2 categories? But I do appreciate you bringing that up because I'm being a little snarky with it, but that was actually the reason why I had my point over here. You can't see my clicker, but going back to these, because I realized we kind of skipped 2 of them, blue can be as logical as red, right? People say that if everyone picks red, everyone will survive. All you have to do is pick red and everyone survives. Well, congratulations. What have you proved? What if everyone picks blue? All of a sudden, everyone survives. Crazy how that works, right? These armchair intellectuals think, oh, if everyone would only pick red, everyone would survive. What if everyone picks blue? So yeah, it's just kind of a logical fallacy. It's really funny seeing how confident people are that, like, if only people would pick red. It's, again, very arrogant, very, very judgmental. And note, I'm arguing a blue a lot of this, but I'm not saying blue is the correct choice. I don't want you to take me shooting down red's arguments as me defending blue and me supporting blue. I'm not. Now, I personally would pick blue. However, all I'm doing here is calling out that a lot of red's arguments are fallacious, right? They're fallacies. If you want to interpret that for me to say that blue is like the correct choice, go ahead if you want, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that all of these arguments for red are easily disproven. They're fallacies. Meanwhile, Max Godard, blue is 100% the most logical choice. The only thing true about red is that it's logically egotistical. The main difference is capacity of death for the voter. Yes. And is that necessarily a bad thing, Max? Is having a survival instinct a bad thing? Is wanting to survive no matter what a bad thing? It's not, right? We do have a stigma for selfishness in like trying to survive and not trying to help other people. But when you're on an airplane, what do they say every time when the masks drop down? If the masks drop down, always put yours on before you help others, right? We frown on survival instincts as something that is bad, something that is wrong, something that is tribal and primitive. But if we didn't have survival instincts, if we didn't act on survival instincts, if we didn't choose the option that would lead us to survive, we wouldn't survive, right? It's obvious. And there you go. See, I'm also shooting down the arguments for blue. I'm doing it both sides. I'm both siding the issue, guys. I swear. I'm not biased. I'm very biased, but that's true, right? Yes, Max Woodard, I agree. I appreciate that one. Not a bad thing, an egotistical thing when compared to the other option. It is more egotistical. Yeah, red is more egotistical than blue. That doesn't make it egotistical on its own, and even if it were, that doesn't make it bad or wrong. However, in comparing these two options, red is objectively more egotistical. Listen, chicks, you guys for some reason don't realize that I don't have any power in deciding what side winning. I have so little power that it won't matter in thousands of attempts for my choice to matter. Lista chicks. First of all, take a deep breath. And then once you've taken that deep breath, I want you to read your own message again. Because you contradicted yourself. I don't have any power in deciding what side's winning. I have so little power. How can you have no power and little power? How can you have no experience dancing and have a minuscule experience dancing? How can you have no cancer and have a very few amount of cancer cells? I think you're blowing things a little out of proportion. You are conflating the idea of having little power to having no power. I hate to break this to you, but every human in the world has little power. But if every human had no power, then how do elections get won? If every human, let's get mathematical with this. If every human has zero power, right? Zero ability to to affect an election. And you have 8 billion people voting. Let's pretend the entire world is in one election, like they kind of are here. Listen, chicks, you're Russian. You're good with math, probably. What is 0 times 8 billion? Hopefully you've done the calculations by now. It's 0. How are elections decided if a large amount of zeros are added together? How does that work? Having little power and having no power definitionally cannot be the same thing. Now, we're all shitting on you, and Max Godard is pointing it out here as well. We're not shitting on you and saying that you're stupid and you're wrong and you have the wrong opinion and you're not thinking about this and you're not thinking this through and you don't know what you're talking about. Not at all. I appreciate you bringing this out because you are very well representing the cynical side, which is a side worth representing and worth bringing out to the forefront. So I appreciate you mentioning this because it allows me to not make a straw man of it and to actually engage with it and to actually intellectually debate with it. There is a very real cynicism and a very real frustration, especially in the modern day, that my vote doesn't matter. What I have to say doesn't matter because I'll be drowned out by other people. And it feels like lip service to say, you should vote anyways. So if that feels like lip service, then look at it from a mathematical lens. If there are 8 billion votes in a presidential election, how many points did each vote worth? 1, right? Is 1 equal to 0? No? Then it's not worthless. Max, exactly. I doubt we'd go too far without our cynics, right? We need people to be cynical. We need to be cynical to a degree. I think what Listachix has fallen victim to, which is something that I've fallen victim to myself, I think all of us as intellectuals have fallen victim to it at some point, if we're not currently part of it. Cynicism is a natural byproduct of reflection, of intelligence. Because cynicism is born from trying to make a difference and not being able to, due to little to no fault of your own, right? Very few people become cynical without having first been optimistic, without having first been hopeful, without having first believed that they could make a difference. And it's in that disillusionment that cynical people come about. All your votes won't matter individually. Okay, Listachix, you're just kind of repeating the same arguments you made before. All your votes won't matter individually, yes, but let's go back to the room full of 5 people. If there are 5 people, and at least 3 people need to raise their hands for everyone to survive, if you're one of those 5 people, does your vote matter? If yes, then that is scalable. Your vote always matters, even if it doesn't seem like it. And I suspect you have a personal history of voting, of trying to make a change, and being drowned out. But past performance is not indicative of future results, right? There is no proof that just because in the past your vote has not mattered, or your vote has not been on the winning side, there is no proof that means it will never make a difference. Why are we talking about 5 people? We doing with 8 billion? Why are you ignoring math? I've got a feeling you haven't done a lot of higher education math. Because if you have, then you would know that concepts of math on smaller scales tend to apply on larger scales as well. At least fundamental concepts, like you cannot have a sum, an addition of any number of numbers. You cannot have a sum of zeros to equal something that is not 0. Someone tell me in the chat if I'm wrong. But if you have an addition, if you are adding together any number of zeros, you cannot come out with a sum that is greater than or less than 0. So if everyone votes and everyone's vote counts as 0, how is there a deciding moment in the election? Does somebody suddenly count as 1 when everyone else counts as 0? No, of course not. it only seems like it doesn't matter because of how insignificant it feels. But every single vote matters just as much as every other one. So that's the math that I think you are not seeing, List of Chicks. Mr. Light, yeah. And he brings in the other idea, the other point. If it's 4 billion against 4 billion, then one person breaks the tie. What if you're the last person to vote? Are you still sure your vote doesn't matter? I think it does. And I think objectively it does. You are literally the tiebreaker. Oh, but what if I'm not the last person who voted? Okay. What if you were the first person who voted? And then we say, oh, you can actually change your vote. All of a sudden, you move to the other one. And now the vote changes, right? Now it switches. Your vote still mattered. If. Stop making these points. List of Chicks, I feel like you're not actually listening to me. This whole thing is a hypothetical. If I were to stop using ifs, then we can't talk about the red button, blue button, because this is an if. Why are you telling us to stop using ifs in a conversation about a giant if? I think you're just being stubborn, or you're just rage baiting, because I don't think you're really thinking this through. I know you're a lot smarter than this. I don't know why you're pretending like you're not as smart as you are. Looking back in the chat, seeing some absolutely crazy shade being thrown at Russians. Thought I was back in the 60s for a second. Oh my god. Shadow Monarch was the last point mean. The last point, just people are just people, is referring to the fact that people who focus on justice, trying to save everybody, just people, right? Like people of justice, people who press blue to save everybody, are just people. They're only people at the end of the day. They can make mistakes. So that's yet another reason why it might end up being that you choose red, you want everyone to choose red, and you don't care about what happens to blue people, but all of a sudden your loved one is a blue person because they're just people at the end of the day. That's that last point. And with your other comment, Shadow Monarch, I'm going to comment on that in just a second because I have a lot to say about that. Max, now I know this just takes it seriously and this issue affects him is all. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Oh, hey, hold on. Actually, this chick says before this, I can't argue good enough. I'm right. You're wrong. So stop arguing. You guys ignoring that my vote is so insignificant that it won't matter. See, that's the thing, Max. That's why I'm having trouble believing that List of Chicks is not just trying to troll here. Because he's a really smart guy. I've seen in his comments that he's quite intelligent and thinks a lot too. So I'm having trouble believing that somebody that intelligent is just stubbornly stomping their feet and saying, I'm right, you're wrong, so stop arguing. That's not a very intellectual thing to say, is it? The key feature of scientists is that their entire job is to be wrong as many times as they possibly can, to get as close as they possibly can to the solution. Somebody who is not willing to be wrong and doesn't want arguments to happen because they believe they are right, that's kind of the furthest thing from being intellectual as I can think of. And since List of Chicks is intellectual, he's proven that. I suspect that he's just trolling, or that he's just trying to light fires. He might be serious. But I don't know. I don't know. I'm a little bit sussy of that. I care a lot too. I also think I'm right in that voters make no sense, so I can feel identified. Yes, you can think you're right. I'm not saying it's wrong to think you're right. What I'm saying is that thinking you're right and saying we should stop discussing it is very different from just thinking you're right. Because obviously you're open to it, discussing it, right? Max, you're here, and Max Listichik's the only person who said stop arguing. He's the only person who's, for some reason, in a video about debate and saying to stop debating. That's very different from just thinking you're right and thinking the other people is crazy. Hypothetical doesn't mean you can make another hypothetical inside. How is this a good point? Well, I'm not making a hypothetical inside of the hypothetical. I'm bringing out another hypothetical because we're not dealing with reality. So we can't only use reality as examples because this isn't a real situation. This is a hypothetical, right? So we can't answer it definitively because we don't know what'll happen. Excuse me. We don't know what'll happen, so we can't use empirical evidence to decide what'll happen. So we have to bring in hypotheticals because we just don't have all the information. We can't have all the information, Listichicks. Mr. Light, I actually voted blue when I first saw it, and then was convinced by red when I saw some arguments. Before thinking about it more and going back to blue. Yeah, I did a lot of back and forth too. And if you were here for the last stream, that definitely didn't happen. I went over that, and I kind of changed this a little bit towards, I had it as my own journey. But I've gone back and forth a lot, but I'm pretty solidly in the blue now. However, I am not going to blame people for picking red. Similarly to how I don't think red people should blame blue for picking blue and say they deserve to die. Yeah, Mr. Light, it's important to argue still. It's always important to have these debates and discussions, even if you think you're right and they're wrong. Even if you know you're right and they're wrong, the debates are still important, right? I don't think that's a hot take, at least not in the IPPC. I think that's the furthest thing from a hot take. Now, I did say that I would go back to Shadow Monarch's comment back here. When facing death, these two buttons, doesn't choice to disappear, those survival instincts kick in. So I'm going to move on to one final... Oh, I have memes over here, but I'm going to move over to this final slide with just a bunch of other side things. Here's the thing. The reason I went over here to address this comment is because the last point is what I'm talking about. Empathy versus biology. That's another way you can frame this debate, right? Picking blue is empathy. It's trying to make sure everyone else survives that aren't you. Whereas picking red is biology. It's survival instincts. I initially had it as survival instincts, but I changed it simply because it was too long. I liked them all being a similar size. But biology effectively gets the idea across. So what your comment is arguing is that if you're facing death, because if you pick blue, you might die, don't your survival instincts kick in, you pick red, because you'll survive no matter what. Well, there's a few things that complicate that. First of all, picking red isn't obviously the survivor's choice. It only is after we've thought about it and mulled it over and made a slideshow about it. Because if you look at it, and especially if you look at it through a certain framing, then half of people picking blue, everyone survives. So red only seems like the survival choice once you've thought about it enough. And the thing about survival instincts is that they kind of shut off your thinking, right? Your frontal lobe kind of takes a backseat and instincts kick in. So if red being the survival choice only comes about by thinking, then you're no longer acting on instinct. So that's the first part that breaks apart the survival instincts. And the other one is a lot more simple. And I can draw out from my own experience. Maybe not being in battle, I've never gone to war, but I've been in boot camp, I've been in simulated battles when I was in the United States Marine Corps. I can tell you about what happens like in the moment when it feels like you're going to die, when survival instincts kick in, to a certain degree. Here's the thing. Our brains are both smarter and dumber than we realize. Far smarter and far dumber. If we're faced with buttons, you live, you die. You might live, you might die, I should say. That generally doesn't actually activate your survival instincts. Because survival instincts act up when something evolutionarily speaking appears in front of you that threatens your survival. It doesn't actually show up when your life is at stake. If it were that logical, we wouldn't have anxiety. We wouldn't be afraid of daddy longlegs that can't hurt us. We wouldn't be afraid of pet snakes if survival instincts kicked in when they were supposed to. They kick in when we perceive an evolutionary threat. Buttons are not an evolutionary threat. At least not yet. So while I can't say this for certain, obviously, I'm too intellectually honest to say that I know for certain what would happen in this impossible hypothetical. I can say with near certainty that being faced with these two choices would not activate your survival instincts, because you are not facing something that has historically been a threat to humans. You have to think about it to realize that your life is in danger. And once you've thought about it, you're no longer in the area of survival instincts. You've already started thinking about it. So those are the two main points as to why I would say survival instincts would not kick in this situation. Choice would not just disappear. Because you have to rationalize it in the first place to even get to the point where survival instincts could kick in. And by that point, it's already too late. You've already disarmed the potential instincts of survival. And then Max also brought up a great point in response to this. I've been in situations where a choice I could take be very risky. Yet I chose what I had in my heart. I know myself, and I care more about the world than I want to see myself. So that's another thing, right? We often see survival instincts. We often see like instinct kicking in and us caring about ourselves. And we see that as like the ultimate truth of us, right? We have all these different societies. We've built all these different morals, all these different norms. But as soon as our lives are at stake, we'll revert back to our primitive selves, right? We often think that way. But I think we underestimate how much our ethics, how much our morals, how much our beliefs, our moral compass, has become integrated into our hardware. I think we have this tendency to separate instincts, survival, primitive, I live no matter what, with I'm a thinking, rational, moral person. Where I don't think there's really a line there. They blend into each other. And as Max has said, I've been in risky situations, but I still do what I feel is right. Because that's just as much part of your hardware as survival. We just tend to delineate those because we've kind of been conditioned to, we've kind of been socialized to, when there really isn't that much of a delineation to make in practically speaking, psychologically speaking, neurologically speaking, sociologically speaking. I could go on. Anyways, I just had to go back to that one because I think that one deserved its proper moment in the sunlight. Because Shadow Monarch, that was a great comment. Okay, anyways, back to what List of Chicks was back to the List of Chicks drama. No, Kenjaku, you and others making very unrealistic and stupid point, trying to ignore simple chance point. This leading nowhere because I and you can't say anything to change my mind about vote matter. It's because you wrong and I ignoring me, ignoring my point. I don't see how I'm ignoring your point when I've responded to every single one of your comments. I don't understand that. Help me understand that, please. I don't see how I could be ignoring what I've read out loud and responded to out loud. Maybe that's just my own limitation, so please help me understand that before I comment on that, because I don't want to respond to a straw man of your argument. However, once again, with that last comment, you can't say anything to change my mind about vote mattering. That's rather close-minded of you, and I would encourage you to rethink that stance. There is not a single thing in my world or my worldview that I would say that about. There is not a single thing that I would say there is a 0% chance of me changing my mind. Oh, what about genocide? Oh, what about murdering childs and burning them in a furnace? Yeah, I think they're pretty darn wrong. But I wouldn't say they're objectively wrong, because that's intellectually dishonest. I live my entire life with the unshakable belief that I only know one thing for sure, and that's that I know nothing for sure. So I would challenge you to not only not say that about this argument, that I can't say anything to change your mind, I would challenge you to drop that from your vocabulary entirely, because it does nothing good for you. And then Lissa Chicks also said, I can die by choosing blue, only thing that matter, only this matters for voting. But if your vote doesn't matter, then why are you choosing red? It sounds like your vote matters to you, at least. Ooh, Max Godard, my case, responsibility is a big deal to the point of getting in tears commenting about it. So of course I'll feel affected when people put that into doubt. Yes, and I remember last stream you were talking about responsibility, so we are definitely going to get into that. In fact, so I don't forget it, I'm going to make a separate little point here. Because yeah, I know responsibility is a big thing. And I want to put it here just so we don't forget about it. That is definitely how that's spelled. Don't worry about it. We'll cover that in a second in more detail, okay, Max Godard? Because there is a lot to say about responsibility when it comes to this debate. Mr. Light, referring to a joke that was previously in the chat, point is that many of us aren't even Americans, that the debate is not really political. Yeah. There's a lot of America centrism, I guess. No, America-centric thinking that, like, if we're talking politically, we're talking from the perspective of America, when really a lot of our assumptions, like even on the internet, just not all of us are American, you know? I am, but a lot of you aren't. So we all just kind of on the internet agree that we're talking from the perspective of America, which is kind of silly. It's kind of really silly. Okay, let's see your response here. I have no intention of changing my mind because you guys bring up hollow points that make zero sense. You're ignoring my point by not acknowledging pure chance inside voting with 8 billion people. Confront chance. Maybe because chance is so little. Okay, I see. So I didn't talk about your comment on chance because I didn't quite understand it. And I still don't quite understand it. I don't see how you put chance into something that is not up to chance, something that is up to choice. Because nobody's flipping a coin, because everyone is not flipping a coin whether they choose red or blue. If they were flipping a coin, if everyone had to flip a coin, and if they land on heads, let's replace the red button and the blue button with heads or tails, right? Everyone flips a coin privately. Not that part matters. If 50% land on heads, everyone survives. If 50% land on, or more land on tails, everyone who landed on heads dies. Now, in that separate hypothetical, I would agree with your point, Listochix, that there is a chance. But then you wouldn't be able to choose red, right? Because you're flipping a coin, you have a chance too. Pressing a button is not a chance. It is a choice. Choice, not chance. I don't see where chance plays a part in this. You could say, oh, there is a chance I'm wrong. If I pick blue, there's a chance everyone picks red. But there's not a chance of that, right? That could happen, but there's no chance. There's no, like I said, flipping a coin. There's no randomized element to it. More people, less power. I have to decide what side winning. This is so fucking simple. Stop making separate hypothetical. Why I don't do this. More people, less power. I have to decide what side winning. Okay, but that's different from chance. Yeah, Max Godard just bringing it up again. In that case, voting red or blue would be a non-issue. So why are you picking red if it doesn't matter? Why not pick blue anyways? I think I have the answer for that. You don't have to respond with this. The answer is obviously because you want to live, right? And I think, like we've said, there's no wrong. But here's the thing, Listochix, you're saying it again. Voting blue would be an issue because I would die. You are assuming you are going to die. So again, you're contradicting yourself. Is there a chance blue dies? Or are you going to die if you pick blue? Those are not the same thing. There is a chance when I get up from this chair, I will have a heart attack and die. Please don't answer this to all the soothsayers, but if I get up from this chair, am I going to die? If you said yes, then I told you not to respond. But everyone who is sensible here will probably say, I don't know, maybe. But you're conflating these two. You're not even conflating these two. You're contradicting yourself. You're saying there's a chance I die if I pick blue. And then in the same breath, you're saying, I'm not going to pick blue because I'll die. One of those is a chance, the other is a certainty. Why are you certain about a chance? So the reason why I'm not addressing your points directly and why I'm creating separate hypotheticals is because I can't engage with you directly. You are contradicting yourself. So I can't engage with one of your points without contradicting your other point. You're telling me to walk down two parallel tracks simultaneously. I physically can't. So I don't know how to respond to you directly because you're making contradictory points. So please do clarify that because I would love to engage with you directly. You seem to think I'm intentionally not doing it, but that's just not the case. Okay. Looks like Max Godard is absolutely going ham. So let's see what we got here. It's the thing of how responsible we feel about our actions and inaction affects other people. I'm the kind of person who can't ignore how I affect other people, no matter how little chance there is. Mr. Light adds, exactly, Max. Even if the chance of mattering is so little, I still choose what I think is the best thing for others. Max continues, chance doesn't matter for me. All I have in my mind is, what if my vote does make the difference? Responding to Listochix, in that case, voting red or blue would be a non-issue. Yeah, we're still discussing here. Many people die just because they got out of their house. By that logic, you should stay home and never meet anyone, because there's a chance you'll die. Then again, if you get out of your bed, you could trip and die, so the safest choice is staying in bed. And I might be stealing your thunder here, but you can't stay in bed either, right? Because what if a meteor's about to hit your bed? Well, you should have gone outside and you would have saved yourself. right? You can't live your life on chance because then you can never get out of bed. But you also can't stay in bed because there's a chance you die either way. So it doesn't work. Max Goodart, absolutely. Some done listening to this while not seeing the comments sure is an experience. Yeah, I'm sorry if you're not reading the comments. If you're not like watching this, you just have to deal with my unfiltered ADHD bouncing around the comments. I hope this is almost somewhat like legible. And if not, too bad, you should have watched it. All right, let's check. Chance of blue winning and 100% of blue winning literally doesn't matter for me because in both choices I can die, so I would choose red. And because my vote is so weak and powerless, there is no reason to choose blue. Okay, but we arrive at this crossroads yet again. If your vote is so weak and powerless, unless you think you are different from other people, unless you're suffering from the main character syndrome, by definition, everyone's vote is the same as yours, right? So everyone's vote is so weak and powerless. All of a sudden, 90% of people are choosing red because there's no point in choosing blue. All of a sudden, 10% of people die because most people chose red because they believe they didn't matter. So, Listochicks, I'm going to ask you directly, in as simple terms as I can say. If that 90% of people, each of them chose my vote does matter, I choose blue, what percentage of people have now chosen blue? If we had 10% in blue, 90 in red, and every 90% of the people in red decided, actually, my vote does matter, and voted blue, what percentage of people chose blue then? Answer me that. Listochicks, I can die by choosing blue. Why are you bringing up other people? Because you're other people. I need to recommend you a great comic called Calvin and Hobbes. Everybody is somebody else to somebody else. I'm bringing up other people because other people matter. Feel free to disagree with me with this Listochicks. But do you want to live in a world where there's no other people? Do you want to live on Earth where you are the sole remaining person? No? How about 2 people? Oh, you want more? How about 3 people? 10 people? 100 people? Where do you draw the line where suddenly start caring about other people? Where are you going to decide you're going to stop caring about other people? I've decided that if I'm going to care about anybody, I might as well care about everybody. Maybe not as a collective, that's too much to care about, but I'm going to care about each person, every single one of the 8 billion people in the world, evenly. Because that's fair. Because I don't want to draw a nonsense line of when I'm going to stop caring about other people. Some don't. I have to draw stuff. Do you want cool JJK fan art or not? Watching this while drawing is a pretty chill experience. I mean, you could always draw another time. But I do want JJK fan art, so you know what? I'm not gonna diss you for that. Listen, chicks, I agree with Shadow because all your points about chance is hollow, and I can't argue very well in live stream. Fucking stupid, if this and that. No, we dealing with 8 billion people who have control over my choice by being this large massive choice. So Listochicks, do you think we're dealing with 8 billion separate people who have 8 billion separate votes? Or do you think we are dealing with an amalgamation, a horrific malformed mass that is created out of 8 billion people thrown into a stew? And if you think we're dealing with that, why are you separating yourself from everyone else? What makes you special from everyone else that your vote matters differently? Okay. Now that we've got that done, Mr. Light and Shadow Monarch are also going into the responsibility with that Mask Godard brought up. So let's get into that, shall we? Because he brings up a great point. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to responsibility with this question. Ethical responsibility, moral responsibility, physical responsibility, because your vote does matter, despite how some people, one person may think. So let's talk about responsibility. Sorry, responsibility. I've been mispronouncing it the whole time. So Max Godard brought up before that it's a thing of how responsible we feel about our actions and inaction affects other people. I'm the kind of person who can't ignore how I affect other people, no matter how little chance there is. So here's one aspect to this whole debate we haven't really started talking about, right? Here's something that we've been avoiding talking about through one way or another, and Max Godard's been like having a stroke on the ground. Fairly, because it is something we should talk about, and it's ridiculous we haven't brought it up until now. If you pick red, and you find out that red won by a single vote, will you feel guilty that all those blue people died, that half the world just died? Probably. I would say if the disparity between red and blue is like any less than 10% or even 20%, and blue loses, and we lose up to 40% of the population, I'd feel pretty guilty about choosing red. I chose my own survival, but if I'd chosen to do blue, I wouldn't be in the situation. Now, I'm not going to make this a 10-hour stream and start talking about guilt and regret. I think all of you regulars know what I feel about regret. I think it's ridiculous. However, that's different from responsibility. Yeah, Max, I think if you picked red and blue dies, there is, even if it's like 90% of people picked red and 10% of people picked blue and 10% of people died, if you are a functional, reasonable, responsible adult, a functional, reasonable, responsible person, human being, you will feel some guilt. You will feel some responsibility for the 10% of people who died. Even if it was overwhelmingly red. Because we are humans, right? We are considerate people. We care about people around us. A lot of people don't know that before agriculture, before we built up not societies, but we built up civilizations around agriculture, hunter-gatherer tribes, societies, were largely altruistic. They made choices not based on their own survival, but on the survival of their group. They took care of the elderly who had trouble walking. They didn't just abandon them because they would slow us down. They took care of each other. They spread out their food. We have archaeological evidence of this. Ironically, the agriculture, which made us expand into civilizations, also didn't invent selfishness, but kind of made it relevant. Selfishness wasn't really a relevant concept before agriculture, before settlements. And that's a really interesting historical fact that a lot of people don't really realize. That altruism is just as baked into our DNA as survival. Because, as I'm sure many of you are thinking and probably typing into the comments, altruism is survival, right? It is. If we don't take care of each other, then we fall apart. I take care of you so you can take care of me. That is the fundamental part of altruism and how it's baked into survival. Which is why I initially said, like an hour ago, that it's ridiculous to try to delineate primal survival instincts and intellectual modern morals. There's not really a line there. They are all one thing, because altruism is also survival. So if you pick red out of a fear of dying, and then you see any number of blue people died because you and other people picked red, you then share responsibility for those blue people dying. And that's not something you can or should overlook. The oldest sign of civilization ever uncovered was a broken bone that healed completely, which means the person was cared for by other people despite not contributing anything to the group. Max Godard, yes. Thank you. And yeah, I wouldn't even say civilization. I would say of society, right? Because that was during hunter-gatherer times. If you have a broken bone, I hate to say it, but you are going to be dragging your group down. The logical survival choice is to leave them behind and keep going. One less mouth to feed. But if they died, their bone wouldn't heal. I'm going to blow a lot of your minds for people who never took a biology class, but your body doesn't heal after you die. If it is healed, then it was alive long enough to heal. Which means it had to be healed. And if they just left him, then how would they survive long enough to heal? They have a broken bone. So, yeah. Exactly. That's a great point to bring up. Not enough people appreciate how much altruism, how much taking care of each other has always been baked into our DNA, right? People live when they are healed. Yes, exactly, Max Godard. Thank you, Shiro Emiya. Okay, back to the list of chicks drama. Looks like Max Godard is also converging on this one too. Okay, first of all, yeah, bringing out the zero-sum, literal zero-sum game, even though it's not the actual capitalization of it. Powerlessness, by definition, can't join in mass power. Yeah, you cannot add any number of zeros and get a non-zero answer. That's just basic math, right? A frickin' third grader could tell you that. List of chicks, by definition, you talking about semantics instead of confronting my very simple point. And Max responds, yeah, I'm confronting your point straight, actually. Yeah, semantics, and we've talked about this before. List of chicks, you weren't here for the last stream, but I talked a lot about semantics and about caring about like specific wordage and like attacking a single word. But semantics are very important. As Max says, that little word makes all the difference in the discussion. Here's the thing. If you try to say, oh, you're just attacking a single word, you're just worrying about semantics. Well, let's put it this way. People die when they are killed. Then you say, no. Technically, people stop living when they are killed. Well, that's just semantics. No, that changes the meaning, right? Dying and stop living are the same thing, only on a surface level. If they were the actual same thing, then they wouldn't be different words. That's why I get so frustrated when people say, oh, semantics. Oh, you're just arguing words. Well, let's look at a more reasonable one. The not dying and killing is kind of ridiculous. Let's look at a more reasonable example. What's the difference between having responsibility for people dying and feeling regret over people dying, feeling guilty? Feeling guilty is being trapped in the past. It's not letting go of what you did. Feeling responsibility is looking towards the future. It is a desire to change your present and future actions based on the past. But that is technically semantics, right? Guilt and responsibility are the same thing. You're trying to pick one or the other, you're doing semantics. It's an important distinction, isn't it? Whether you're facing the past or the future is a very big deal. So people talking about semantics, oh, it doesn't matter, is so frustrating because it does matter. Words do matter. Words mean things. We have words for different things because they mean different things, because it's important to delineate these things. So the semantics argument is just so frustrating to me. Mr. Light, I feel like the subsection of the red voters conflate red with abstention. I assume you mean with abstaining, basically. Yeah, and I'm going to go ahead and just really quickly, because after all these points, which I'll come back to, I do have a bunch of memes here. This is the one I want to point at to respond to this one. So with this meme, you have red, nothing happens. Blue, you enter the ultimate death gamble. You enter the ultimate death gamble. You and everyone who presses this button dies. Unless more than 50% of people choose to press this button. Are you going to enter this ultimate death gamble, or are you going to do the one that does nothing? With my other example, the wood chipper. Are you going to step in the wood chipper, or are you going to stay out of it? That's what you're bringing up, right, Mr. Light? There's this idea among a lot of the people who would vote red that choosing blue is choosing to potentially die, choosing red is choosing to do nothing, to not change the status quo. Here's the thing. Red is not abstaining. Red is picking red, right? You can frame this however you want. Objectively, if this were an actual situation that's happening, there are two buttons in front of you. You can't abstain by pressing one of the buttons. That is a contradiction. They just think of it as an abstaining because the status quo doesn't change. They survive no matter what. But what they don't see is that by pressing red, they are making blue less likely to win. They are making it more likely that people will die, right? Max Godard, what if someone accidentally fell into the wood chipper? Exactly. Bringing that point that we brought up earlier into this other framing device. What if people accidentally press the blue button? What if they tripped on their way to press the red button? What if their finger slipped somehow? Those people are going to die due to no real fault of their own. All right, what does List of Chicks have to say now? I love how this is turning into basically just a roasting session of List of Chicks. Guys, please, let's ignore one more time and one after that. What chances of your decision inside 8 billion group would make literally zero impact result? 99.99999%. Okay. I'm actually not confident in this because I don't have a math degree, so I'm going to need you guys to help me out in chat. Pull out your calculators, pull out your abacus if you have it, and help me figure out if 99.99999 is equal to 100. I'm not good enough at math to do that calculation, so I need you guys to help me out. Are those two equal? Is 99.99999 equal to 100? I don't think it is. I left my abacus upstairs though, so you guys are gonna help me out with that one. Words are the single most beautiful and frustrating thing about expressing myself to others. 100% agree with that, Max Godard. I 100% agree with that. Because when you try to be semantic, right? When you try to choose the right words, then people get frustrated. They're like, oh, whatever, you're just picking little points. You're just making these little arguments, and they don't see how much it really should matter. Because there's this disrespect for languages now, or for the nuance of language, which is so frustrating. And people like us, people like you and me, who are trying to genuinely express ourselves properly through language, get shunned because, oh, you're talking high and mighty. Oh, you're using all this high language. You're not talking like you're on the street. Yeah, because the street sucks at expressing how they think, right? By overly generalizing all these terms, you're losing the ability to express yourself adequately. So yeah, it's beautiful and frustrating, 100%. List of Chicks, it's not for me. Max, it's enough for you because you are ignoring reality completely. You will die for nothing, or blue will win, not because of you. Living Dog just said, List of Chicks, impact is impact. You matter even though you're a grain in the whole 8 billion people. Same with your vote. That's a great way of bringing that up, Living Dog. So List of Chicks, let me pivot a little bit. Let me ask you this. You have an hourglass, right? I really wish I had a prop for this, but this is unfortunately not staged. You have an hourglass, right? It's filled with countless sands. Let's say it's filled with a random number off the top of my head, 8 billion sand grains. If you take out one sand and you flip it over, are you going to notice the difference? No, right? You're not going to notice it. Technically, there will be a difference in when it empties out. It'll be to a degree that you can't detect. Now, suppose every single grain of sand is conscious. And they're all told, once this thing flips over and you fall to the other side, you die. So all of them are going to flee, right? Because they don't want to die. Now flip it over. How long does it take for all of the sand in the bottle to reach the other side if every single grain left? Well, you can answer one of two ways, right? It'll either take an infinity amount of time or it'll be instant. There's no sand to flip over. You can't say if blue wins, it wasn't because of you if you voted blue. It's literally because of you. It's not just because of you, but it is because of you. Because all of these 8 billion votes are single, individual, insignificant votes. The world changes. I will start this with what I started the stream with. The world changes when everybody does what they know to be insufficient on its own. That is the only way to change the world, if everyone does what is not enough on their own. Because once everyone does it together, it becomes enough. Okay, once again, I'm confused by your point, List of Chicks. Why are we talking about every single choice personally? How is it changing numbers? Please elaborate on what you're saying here. Why are we talking about every single choice personally? I'm confused because aren't you taking it personally? Aren't you saying that I'm going to pick red because my vote doesn't matter, so I'm going to survive? I could be wrong. I could be misinterpreting. But it sounds like you're the only person who's looking at this personally. I could be wrong. Feel free to clarify in the comments, in the live chat. But I don't see how any of us are being more personal than you are. Yo, Neon Zombies sneaking in here. Thought we wouldn't notice you. To me, this conversation just reminds me of the dilemma that you were going over with Ghetto's philosophy. If you don't press the logical red button, then being dumb should be a death sentence. Yeah, exactly, right? And you know what? Max, this is your moment to shine. As if they weren't before. Here's the meme you brought up in Discord, right? And this is regarding what Nyan was saying. And it was regarding what I was saying earlier about red. It's very arrogant. Now, this meme obviously goes, do you think dumb people deserve to die? No? You should press the blue button so that they don't die. Yes? Well, do you think people who think dumb people deserve to live deserve to die? No? Press the blue button. Do you think people who think dumb people deserve to live deserve to die? Or do you think people who think dumb people deserve to live deserve to die? No? Choose the blue button. You can take this all the way down, right? If at any point you believe that these people don't deserve to die, and you pick red anyways, you're condemning those people to death. Not individually, you don't bear sole responsibility, but you do bear responsibility. So List of Chicks, here, I'm bringing you back in. You bear some responsibility. It is very small, especially if say one person picks blue, everyone else picks red. Technically, 8 billion people bear the responsibility of killing that one person. It's infinitesimally small, but it's not zero. Because if everybody picked blue instead, nobody died. But one person died because each person made the individual choice of picking red. There is no mob mentality. Yes, Max Godard, I should zoom in so it can be read. I can't really see what you can read right now. I know the quality on this thing isn't as good as it should be. Zoom in isn't working like this. Let me do this. There you go. I don't know why my screen share on OBS doesn't record as good quality as I want it to. It looks a lot better on my screen than it shows up like in the VODs. So here, this will do the trick. It'd only be part of it, but I guess I can like. Can't I like? I don't know. That's good enough. You can probably read it with that, and it just goes on like that. Listen, chicks, every single one of your choices have equal power of mind. You're all delusional to think that this is reality where red winning only if your personal choice red and blue winning if you choose blue. Living Dog, this is truly the greatest debate ever. List of Chicks versus the entire stream. Honestly, we should just have List of Chicks up here. I wish I could like swap with him and have him do the live stream instead. That would be awesome. But then I wouldn't be able to bring up all these awesome visuals, so you're gonna have to deal with it. So to respond to that, I think you're misunderstanding what we're arguing, List of Chicks. We are not arguing that my choice decides this vote. We are not. Sorry, one sec. We are not arguing that if I pick red, red's gonna win. If I pick blue, blue's gonna win. We're not thinking in this black and white thinking, and I encourage you to do the same. We are saying that I want to make it more likely that blue will win. I don't want to bear some responsibility that red won. You need to look at this. You should look at this as a spectrum. None of us are saying that red only wins if I choose red and blue only wins if I choose blue. What I am saying is that red will win if everybody individually chooses red. And blue will win if half of everybody individually chooses blue. Blue only carries risk if we allow it to. Mr. Light, personally, I don't want to be responsible for the death of anyone and don't want to live in a world where red wins, so it's blue all the way down for me. Unless I know for a fact that everyone chooses red, which isn't part of the hypothetical. Yeah, and if you know for a fact that everyone chooses red, guess what? You're part of everyone, so you're choosing red anyways, right? And it's not really a choice then. So yeah. I see two ways of this playing out where red wins. One, I voted red as well. And whoever voted blue, I share responsibility for them dying. Two, red wins and I vote blue. And I don't have to deal with a world where I have to bear responsibility for everyone who chose blue, right? So I don't see a way where I choose red and I come out happy. Meanwhile, I see significant ways. I see infinite choices practically, 4 billion possibilities where I pick blue and I come out happy. Listen, chicks, I literally don't care about my responsibility. That sounds like a personal issue. That sounds like something you should bring up with your therapist, not with us here. Yeah, Living Dog, that's on you, bro. Yeah, that's not our job to fix. If you don't care about your responsibility, then that's... I don't know if that's the thing that you should admit in public. I don't think that's the flex you think it is. Shadow Monarch, I agree. I think Listachix is caught by the fact that red survives no matter what. Yeah, I think he's too caught up in the fact that there is a chance of dying with blue. So maybe I'll have to adjust my previous response to your comment. Maybe at least one person in the world is getting caught up into survival instincts. But I think he's a little bit... I think Listachix is just a little bit too caught up on the fact that he believes red will win. He claims it doesn't matter, that your vote doesn't matter, and yet he believes that enough votes matter that red's going to win. He believes that if he picks blue, or at least it seems that he believes that if he picks blue, he's going to die. He has that certainty for some reason, and I'm not sure where that's coming from. And Listachix, obviously I don't want to talk about you through third person when you're right here. If you can respond to this, feel free to correct me. But it seems like you believe that if you pick blue, you're going to die, even though that's not written anywhere in contract. Some don't. I don't like responsibility. It's coarse and gets everywhere. Nice. Okay, let's get out of this. I think y'all have had plenty of time to read this. Uh-oh. How do I get back? Oh, wait. There we go. Nope, that's not right. I was just in the wrong... Yeah, there it is. Slideshow. Let's get back into this. We'll get to that in a second. Who's winning doesn't matter for my choice, and I believe that red winning, by the way. Yeah, Listachix, that's fine. You can believe that red's gonna win. But that doesn't mean red's gonna win, right? Just because you believe it doesn't mean it's true. That's something a lot more people in this world need to hear, but just because you believe it doesn't mean it's true. Just because you pick blue doesn't mean you're gonna die. Ooh, I like this comment by Max. Choices don't affect numbers most of the time, but when numbers are affected, it's always because of someone's choices. I like that. Choice isn't always a factor. But when choice is a factor, it is always a significant factor. Because choice doesn't have to weigh on the scale, but when it does, it's pretty freaking heavy, right? It's pretty freaking heavy. Especially when each of those numbers are a choice. So, let's bring up another one of these bullet points. One that we haven't touched on yet. And one that I talked about in the last stream that didn't happen. Irony and certainty. We've already covered the framing wars. The thing I find most interesting about this debate, about this dilemma over everything else, is the fact that the more certain you are that your choice is correct, whether it's blue or red, the more you're actually falling victim to the true dilemma here, the true test. I believe that the only truly correct idea, the only truly correct answer, if you would, to this dilemma is to pick red or blue, have arguments to support your choice, have counter arguments for the ones against your choice, and most importantly, to admit that your choice is not the correct choice. I believe that is the only way to come out of this dilemma, to come out on top with the correct answer. The only way to solve this dilemma, to finally address the title of this video. See, it's not clickbait. The only way to solve this dilemma is by taking a choice, looking at both sides and supporting your evidence, and then admitting that your choice is your choice. You have reasons for it, but it is not the correct choice. That's the only way, the only correct answer to this. Because the more certain you are in one or the other, the more you are blinding yourself to the other side. Now, am I saying that is a fact? No, because that's the whole point, right? There's no certainty. And I'm okay with that. I'm comfortable with that. I'm secure with that. However, in this entire stream, in the 2.5 hours we've been here, I've yet to see a single argument I couldn't respond to. I couldn't have a counter argument for. Until the moment somebody brings up a comment in this chat that I can't respond to, that I just have to say, I grant you that, then I have zero evidence that either choice, red or blue, is objectively correct. I'm over here shooting down both sides. I would personally choose blue. I'm not saying blue is correct, because I can shoot down blue arguments as well. Neither side is certain, and the more certain you are in one or the other, the more deeply you are falling for this dilemma. And that is the most interesting part about this entire debate for me. Watching all these people squabble and argue from way up high, watching them on the street scramble for their little poor coins. Obviously not. I'm not pretending I'm above it. But I won't engage with this picking one side or the other. I won't engage with that because that is falling for it. That is falling for really what I believe this question was posed for. This question was effectively posed to, as I see it, obviously, I did not create this debate, so I can't say any of this for certain. I'm going to say that until I'm blue in the face. Blue in the face. I see this entire debate, this entire argument, this entire phenomenon as a case in point to, as Shadow Monarch is saying in the chat, a case in point to how radicalized, how divided we've become as a collective society of Earth. Yes, as a society, especially in America, but as a collective society of humanity. This goes beyond blue and red. This blue button, red button really just illuminates how tribal we've become in recent years. And it's not just a recent phenomenon, right? It's been getting more and more so, at least in America, ever since I think like the 1960s. Is one of the clearest statistics. But we are becoming more extreme. We are filtering to one side or the other and hopping into our echo chambers. And especially when the internet came about, that's become even more of a problem, right? I think the real case study of this dilemma is showcasing just how willing we are to be certain in our decision, to believe our decision to be objectively correct, to be certain that the other side just doesn't get it, and that they are definitely wrong. The more certain you are that the other side is definitely wrong, the more you are falling for this dilemma. And that's my that's my honest, genuine opinion about this dilemma. Which is why I think the only way to solve it is by still picking a side. I'm not saying you can't pick a side, you have to press a button. But acknowledging that your choice is not the correct choice. It is the right choice for you in your circumstance. That does not apply to everyone else. Everyone makes their own choice equally. But I made my right choice, not the correct one. Anyways, I've been too serious here. I need to read some List of Chicks comments. Genuinely have zero clue what delusional things you guys talking about. All of your choices individually don't matter. And no, not 0%, but so small it's absolutely insignificant. Most important thing is you will die, but choosing blue or you have chance doesn't matter, you die. I literally have no idea why you guys think that your choice matters, just because every small choice makes one decision. This is so stupid to make a connection between single components and whole thing, 1 billion or 8 billion or 9, I don't know. Yeah, we were saying 8 billion. It's probably close to 9 at this point, honestly, but we're going to say 8 billion just for the sake of consistency. First of all, thank you for that. Thank you for that comic relief, List of Chicks. But jokes aside, I mean, I feel like I'm repeating myself replying to you, because I think we all are just rephrasing our arguments and then rehashing them. Because again, you're contradicting yourself. You will die choosing blue, or you have a choice. Doesn't matter, you die. Or you have a chance. Doesn't matter, you die. You were saying if you pick blue, you will die, or you have a chance of dying. Either way, you die. I'm starting to think there's an English barrier divide between you and me, Lista Chicks. But if you have a chance of dying, that doesn't mean you die. It means you can die, but it doesn't mean you die. I'm repeating myself for 25 plus minutes, and you guys make delusional points for 30 plus. Yeah, Lista Chicks, way to call yourself out for being late. I don't think that's the flex you think it is. I love this from Max. You believe that despite being shown the logic behind blue voters, even if you don't agree, you have to admit we are many, and we have many ways to delude ourselves in believing blue is the correct choice. We are legion. We are legion, for we are one. We are many. I forget how the quote goes, but you get the point. We are all a hive mind. Never underestimate the delusion of a hive mind. Yes, unknown. There is one certainty. This art is turning out great. Can't wait to share it when it's done. Thank you, Sumknown. Always bringing some sense back into these crazy live streams. I cannot wait to see that. The one thing we can be certain about in this world. Your art is going to be fire. Shadow Monarch, it didn't say you have to press a button, so I'm making the decision to not press any button. Sorry. See, what is wrong with not pressing buttons? I agree and disagree with that. On one hand, you're right. The original post, or at least what we're using as the original post, the 2026 April one. No, actually, you're not right. According to the initial instructions, everyone in the world has to take a private vote by pressing a red or blue button. By pressing a red or blue button. So that also responds to Living Dog here. What if I press both buttons at once? I was about to join with you and say that that's a great way to poke holes in this, but Tim actually accounted for that. Everyone in the world has to take a private vote, so you have to. It's not an option. And you press a red or a blue button, so you can't press both. So unfortunately, that shoots down both of those arguments, which I was actually about to agree with. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. Living Dog, can you guys bench 420 tons? Not yet. Living Dog, so if I press both buttons at once, what happens? Is my vote nullified? Do I die? How are these rules enforced? I'm going to answer that in a second. I'm going to switch over to this meme because it's the one we haven't looked at yet, and you guys can read it as you're not listening to me, you're reading this instead. Or you can just choose not to read it because you kind of get the idea once you start reading like one line. I'm about to get metaphysical with you. Not really. I'm kind of using that word loosely, like ridiculously loosely, like entirely wrong, but I'm going to use it. And I'm going to stick with it because I can't think of a better word right now. Here's the thing. Do you remember how I said you can't present this dilemma with both options simultaneously because we only exist in one time? In a similar way, not in the same way, but in a similar way, you cannot press both buttons at once, can you? Now, if you have a robot that is specifically timed to bring them down at the exact same time, you might be able to. But according to these rules, there's no robot, there's just you. So if you try to press both at once, due to the nature of humans being imperfect, technically, as you press both buttons down, there's going to be a moment, whatever the activation point is where you press the button, where one of them is just slightly lower than the other, and one gets pressed first. So you can't actually press both at once, unfortunately. And I think that's how the rule will be enforced. Whatever, like, fraction of a nanosecond button gets activated first is your choice. And that's my answer to that. Absolutely Living Dog. This is a great meme. I've already won because I depicted you as a Soy Jack Cinema. It's kind of a ridiculous meme, and it's really funny, and it should go without saying, but I should say it anyways. This is in jest, right? This is not me, like, trying to spread blue propaganda. I mean, I kind of agree with it to a degree, but mainly it's just kind of funny. It's obviously not this simple. It's not just the crazy reds with the stoic blues. This is ironic. I just happen to agree with it a little bit, but it's mainly ironic. Inspired by the ancient sophists themselves. Yes, Mr. Light, yes. Okay, yeah, Living Dog. It is We Are Legion for We Are Many. Yeah, I get them switched up because my ADHD. I'm gonna blame my ADHD. I blame all of my mistakes on my intellectual disabilities. Okay, so there was one last point I wanted to bring up here because it was something brought up in the previous stream. Someone brought up the trolley problem. And I think... Oh, hold on. Hold that thought. Can't talk about the trolley problem yet. Listicix is speaking. Kenjaku. Act like I'm 5 years old and explain where the connection between every small choice in the end makes decision and my personal choice is so insignificant you won't even notice, even if it was 1,000 times stronger. Okay, so I don't have a lot of experience interacting with 5-year-olds, but I'm gonna try my best. What is the connection between every small choice matters and my choice is so insignificant you won't notice it? How would I explain that to a 5-year-old? So, picture you're in a treehouse. And you just live in the treehouse. That's just your life. You live in a freaking awesome treehouse and you eat cake every day. Okay, Mr. 5-year-old? You're in a treehouse. Every single day... Actually, no. Every single second, a tiny, teensy lumberjack comes up to the tree and hits it with an axe, breaking off a twig. Every single second. First question, did you notice that twig went missing? Mr. 5-year-old goes up and goes, no, I didn't notice it. It was just a single twig. How would I notice that from my treehouse? Yes, Mr. 5-year-old, you're right. You wouldn't notice it. You wouldn't notice that single twig going missing. Now, pretend you've lived in that treehouse for, let's say, a year. 365 days, however many seconds there are in that. I don't feel like doing math right now. That's a lot of twigs. That might be enough twigs to bring the tree down. So let me ask you, did that tiny lumberjack swinging his axe have any role in bringing that tree down? Well, what if the lumberjack, what if he had not done it? What if he had not swung his axe? Would the tree still be up? Probably, right? So it is in all those things that you don't notice, that are so small you don't notice, that add up to bring the tree down. and now you don't have a treehouse anymore. And I think that's the best way I can explain it to a 5-year-old. Though I don't think a 5-year-old would quite understand insignificance, so I think that's kind of a non-starter. But that's my best shot. Please feel free to rate me out of 10 how I did for explaining it to the 5-year-old. He has 100% roll in falling of the tree. Time doesn't matter in red button, blue button scenario. But you're thinking of this only in terms of limited dimensions, Lista Chicks. You're thinking of time and space as separate things. Now, you may or may not have heard of this, but there's a thing called the time-space continuum. And you kind of need to understand that sort of four-dimensional plane in order to understand how time dilation works. That's not relevant to this one, to this conversation, but let me explain it this way. If that tiny lumberjack hits the tree 1,000,000 times, is there any end result difference from 1,000,000 lumberjacks hitting that tree one time? Well, yes, 1,000,000 people hitting it at one time will be a lot of force all at once. That's outside of the scope of this analogy. The point is that you are thinking of time as this separate thing, whereas the end result is still the same. There are still 1,000,000 strikes being dealt to the tree. So 1,000,000 people voting versus one person voting 1,000,000 times. Let me put it this way, as a coin flipping. If one person flipped a coin 1,000,000 times over a course of time, versus 1,000,000 people flipping a single coin each at once, which of those two scenarios has a higher chance of landing on more heads than the other? I'm not going to wait for one of your responses, because if you respond one or the other, then I'm sorry to say this. I hate to be the diagnoser, but you're kind of dumb. Because both of those are 1,000,000 coin flips, right? They have the exact same chance. Time doesn't matter. What matters is what actually happens. Whether it's 1,000,000 people flipping a coin at the same time, or one person flipping a coin 1,000,000 times, there's still 1,000,000 coin flips. Whether it's one person voting 8 billion times, or 8 billion people voting one time, there's still 8 billion votes going into it. So you can't say time is irrelevant, because the same rule applies. It's still 1,000,000 swings of the tiny axe to fell the tree. Neon Zombies. With this example, funnily enough, it is difficult to go any one lumberjack and convince them to stop, because the other lumberjacks will still ensure the damage is done to the treehouse. But it might not be enough, right? What if we paused time exactly at the lumberjack, exactly at the swing that brought down the tree, and then you rewind the tape? If that one lumberjack hadn't hit the tree, or if any one of those lumberjacks, or if that single lumberjack at any point in time hadn't hit the tree, and then they all stopped, the tree would still be standing, right? Because we stopped at the point where the tree fell. So if we could go in our time machine and go back and tell any one of those lumberjacks, or that same lumberjack at any point in time, don't swing this second, and then we go back to where we paused time, the tree would still be standing. Every single insignificant, unnoticeable vote matters. Every single vote bears some responsibility in the outcome, because the outcome is determined by every individual vote. It does require that you get a certain amount of lumberjacks to stop, but that's where we use morality to appeal to them not being part of this. Yeah, so I kind of already responded to that. We're talking about here's the thing. Well, actually, we don't even need to say, like, we suddenly tell them to stop after the one causes it to fall. When the last one hits it and it falls, right? They're not going to keep hitting it. They're going to stop because the tree's fallen. All of a sudden, if you go back in time and tell any one of them to stop, guess what? The tree doesn't fall anymore, because there aren't enough swings to make it fall. Right? Every single vote matters. Let's see. Earlier, Someone was saying, I think I was the one to bring up the trolley problem, since I was the one who made the Gojo creates purple button, which sends you to the trolley problem instead. That might have been it. That might have been it. So we'll talk about the trolley problem in a second. But first, list of chicks. How is any number of them doing anything makes mine powerless vote stronger? My vote the same, in concept of them working together have zero correlation to my vote. See, I'm not talking about making your vote stronger. Your vote has the same strength as everyone else. Which is why I'm not saying you alone bear responsibility. You alone make this decision. Again, you're the only one who is like making this personal. You don't make the decision alone, but you are partially responsible. It's not about your vote making your vote stronger. It's about recognizing that your vote has power already. It doesn't need to get stronger. You're plenty strong already. Okay. So let's really quickly go into the trolley problem, because one thing I read is that this original problem was actually an extension of the trolley problem. And for those of you who don't know, obviously everyone who's here live knows, because I think it's safe to assume that everyone here has been around enough philosophical circles to know what the trolley problem is. But maybe I shouldn't assume that. And for anyone watching after this who doesn't know what it is somehow, trolley problem is... Actually, I don't know why I'm trying to just describe it. I can just check this out. Let me get a visual live, because the internet is a real thing. Here we go. Alrighty. Trolley problem. I don't like that visual. Let's find a better one. Yeah, let's just do this one. So, here's the trolley problem, right? Those of you who don't know, there is a trolley heading down tracks. However, there are a certain number of people, here we have 5 people, who are tied down to the tracks. You stand next to a lever that can divert the trolley onto another track, where only one person is tied on the tracks. Do you pull the lever? Well, the realists and the practical people say, of course I pull the lever. I'm choosing whether 5 people die or 1 people die. Initially, this makes a lot of intellectuals scoff their eyes at the trolley problem, because it's obvious. I'm not here to count individual lives, but if I can save 4 lives by having 1 person die instead of 5, of course I'm going to do it. It's not about whether the 5 people matter more than the 1 person. It's just simply, I'm effectively saving 4 lives. I'm really saving 5 lives. It's cost 1. So on the surface, it's pretty simple, right? Pretty straightforward. Shadow Monarch. I do know this, but I didn't know the name of this. Yeah, this is the trolley problem. Here's the thing, and the part that a lot of people don't get to with the trolley problem. It's not actually a debate about the weight of lives, about whether you can measure lives. The real psychological component of the trolley problem, the main one I should say, not the real one, the main psychological component of this is choice. You stand next to the lever. Unlike the red button, blue button, you choose action or inaction. If you choose action because you want to save the 5 people, you are choosing to kill that 1 person. Somebody who would not have died will now die because of your choice. Shout out Max Godard. Responsibility. Guilt. Right? You are entirely responsible, you could argue, or mostly responsible, for that 1 person dying, because they would not have died if you had not acted. On that same topic, if you had not acted, yes, 5 people would be dead, but you bear no responsibility, because you didn't do anything. Or do you? Because the bystander effect is also a thing, right? People do bear responsibility for not acting. If I have a gun and somebody walks into a supermarket, like right in front of me at point blank range, and starts shooting around at people, if I choose inaction, I'm partially responsible for those people dying. Whereas if I point my gun at point blank and shoot them, I'm saving lives. So action is not the only thing that breeds responsibility. Inaction does too. Which is why this is actually an interesting problem. And like the red button, blue button, anybody who is determined, who is completely convinced and cannot be talked out of it that either pulling the lever or not pulling the lever is correct, isn't seeing the bigger picture. Because it's really about choice, right? And I thought that was really interesting. I thought that was worth bringing up here because I think it's relevant, right? And it serves to point out the fact that with the red button, blue button dilemma, it's actually not about, as this meme points out, it's not about action versus inaction. You have to act either way. You have to choose whether you act in a way that might save the blue, or act in a way that for sure saves yourself. Unlike the trolley problem, they're both actions. Mr. Light, in your scenario, the person shooting has a moral responsibility for making people in danger, so it doesn't work as well, in my opinion. But how is that different, Mr. Light? How is that different from the trolley problem? In this situation, you have the moral responsibility to divert the trolley. You have the moral responsibility to protect more lives. So how is my situation different from the trolley situation in that regard? Because the guy in the track isn't the one that set it up. Okay, well, I see where you're coming from. I see the communication mistake, the communication breakdown. I'm not likening the one person to the shooter. Actually, it's just a coincidence that they both involve either having one person die or having several people die. I'm simply looking at it from a perspective, a more vague perspective of choosing to save more lives. Because in my situation, let's say the mall problem, you're not choosing whether to shoot the person or whether to shoot a bunch of other people, right? You're choosing to shoot the person to save the other people. So in the mall example, the trolley equivalent, so the trolley, let me take a step back. The trolley has two options, right? In action, you do nothing, 5 people die. Action, you pull the lever, 1 person dies. So if we were directly to translate that into the mall problem, my example, your inaction, the part where 5 people die in the trolley problem, is you not shooting the shooter, is letting all the people that they shoot at die. Your action is shooting them. So it's not about letting this innocent person die or letting the shooter die. It's about action versus inaction. It's about whether you choose to save multiple people or whether you don't and have less responsibility for it, if that makes sense. I personally prefer the doctor analogy presented The Good Place. I've heard of that. I haven't watched it. Feel free to bring it up here. But I'm not in the business of comparing analogies. I'm not saying my analogy is great. I'm just saying it as a purpose of illustration. The point of action versus inaction. Anyways, we need to take a break from the trolley problem because my fucking show is on. There's more List of Chicks drama. Let's start back from up here. Okay, let's start off with, I don't care about responsibility, I care about end result. Of course I would vote blue if I had known the difference between the votes would be 1. For me, 50% of dying, not even worth considering pressing blue if I know for a fact that my vote would be critical 50%. I would press blue if my power allowed to guarantee that with 99% that blue wins and 0% if I'm choosing red. So I think the problem here, List of Chicks, is that You're basically presenting the idea that if I were sure that my choice was the deciding vote, I would choose blue, which is very opportunistic. And that's not a bad thing. I'm not insulting you. It's just a fact. That's opportunistic. If I knew my vote would be the deciding vote, I would choose something else. Now, I think most people who choose red would say that. If they were presented with a button and said, the entire world is perfectly split, you choose the red or blue, that matters. Yeah, most people are going to choose blue, right? Obviously. Some people just want to watch the world burn, but we're not talking about them. Here's what we are talking about. Actually, no, I'm not going to say here's what we are talking about. I'm going to point out something else. Because I noticed you're actually doing something that you previously criticized. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. You might have changed your mind. But if you didn't change your mind, I want to point this to your attention, because you might not have thought of this. You are doing what you just criticized. You are presenting a hypothetical within a hypothetical. You're doing what you accused me of doing earlier. I was presenting alternative hypotheticals. You are literally presenting hypothetical within a hypothetical. So the outside hypothetical, red button, blue button. You are adding a second layer of hypotheticals with, if I was presented the choice, if I was presented with the knowledge that it's even. So I could like argue against their point directly, but I think it's more fun if I just point out the hypocrisy and point out that you are bringing a hypothetical within a hypothetical. So if you're okay with that now, that's not a criticism. If you're not okay with it, maybe you should be aware that you're doing that. I just thought you might want to know about that. Because like a lot of people who will pick blue, there's a good chance you just didn't realize that yourself. Okay, let's continue this logistics drama from before. Max Godard responded, the end result is born from collective responsibility, and collective responsibility is born from individual responsibility. Can't have collective without individuals, yep. The red button, blue button is a metaphor for collective power. 99% of the time, big historical changes have occurred due to many individual choices. Negating said power is negating history. 100% agree. Neon Zombies throws in, Listo, you're saying if your vote would have made the difference, you would switch. You are still indirectly causing harm by choosing red, because you don't know whether it's the difference, but it could. Exactly. You shouldn't need to have certainty to make a choice. I would rather increase the odds in my favor. Because if you need certainty to make a choice, then you've probably never made a choice in your life, because there's no such thing as certainty in reality. Lissa Chicks responded to Max, how is this have anything at all to do with my single weak choice? I'm not a fucking collective power, I'm a single person, but you're part of a collective. Everybody in the collective is a single person as well. And again, you're neglecting them. Neon responds, I'm not okay with potentially missing being that final vote, nor potentially condemning idiots to death. Therefore, I will always choose blue. And to build off of that, even if I'm not the deciding vote, if I pick red and red wins, I bear partial responsibility for all blue dying, right? Melissa Chicks responded, it could be, but chance is so little I literally don't care about it could, because it won't matter IRL. I need to calm down. Fair enough. Collective would work without me also. I'm so small and insignificant. Collectives don't exist if every individual thinks like you do, which there's a good chance they will. As Max said, yep, collectives are made up of single individuals. You are making up a collective. Collective would work without me, but if everyone says that, suddenly there's no collective. I'm not sure what about that you're not accepting. So please do help us understand that, so we can help clarify that for you. Neon says, you literally cannot know it won't matter in real life. You do not know whether those 8 billion people, it is completely tied and comes down to you, so you're gambling with their lives. Also true, it is a sense of gambling. I would rather just pick blue and be certain that I'm weighing things inside of everyone surviving. I know that chances make me believe it won't matter, not sure what that means, list of chicks. Max Godard says, you don't get to choose whether you are a part of a collective or not. True. Every choice, be it vote one way or another, or not vote, is a choice that affects the collective. Yeah, otherwise you're a part of another collective. I don't think anyone here feels they're so special that they can make a choice where they're not part of any collective whatsoever. And if you are, I hate to be the one to break it to you, but you're not that special. You may be my special, but you're not that special. Okay, we're near the present day now. Listajik says, I'm presenting hypothetical within hypothetical only because I was talking about my choice and wasn't making points, so you're wrong about me contributing. Well, I'm neglecting them. What I need to say so I'm not neglecting collective individuals. Do not understand. I'm understanding everything, but this doesn't make my choice stronger. Power is literally something worth considering while voting. Except it's not, though. If everyone is voting in a void, power is not worth considering because everyone has the exact same power. Oh, power is literally single thing worth considering while voting. But why is it worth considering? If I went into, let's say, World of Warcraft, some random MMO game, and I gave every single player in the game a massive multiplier of 100%, sorry, not 100%, of 1 times multiplier to everyone's power. Is that worth considering? Or how about this? I gave every single player who plays World of Warcraft and every player who will ever play in the future, I give them all a 2 times multiplier to their power. Is that worth considering? No, because everyone's still exactly where they were before, right? Everyone's still where they were. Now, don't extend that too far, because then you'd say, oh, if you have 10 points, it gets multiplied 20. If you have 100, it gets multiplied 200. We're getting too far into the weeds. The point is, everybody's vote is the same. Everyone has the same power. So how is it worth considering if it's the one thing that everyone has equally? Everyone only has one vote. And in this hypothetical that this whole stream is about, everybody is voting individually, privately. So no one can influence other people. There is no power here beyond the exactly equal power of the single vote you have. So I don't understand how power is worth considering. Help me understand that, Listajix. Max Godard, Naruto is political. There's a context to that comment, but I'm not going to read it out loud. I choose to take that out of context and leave it like that. Naruto is political. Aw, Max, Listajix is special to me, okay? Well, there you go, Listajix. Your Max is special. Nyan says, your choice doesn't need to be stronger. It's about where you're okay placing that small insignificant weight. I will always choose to place my feather on the scale that leads to my best moral belief. I agree with that, Nyan. Regardless of whether it tips the scales or not, I would rather choose the choice that will help me sleep at night. I will rather choose the choice that fits best with my belief, that follows my moral compass. Because if I pick blue and it still doesn't work, at least I picked the choice I won't be guilty about. I won't feel bad about later. Oh, Shadow Monarch is heading out. All right. I'm glad you enjoyed the stream, even though it was just a whole bunch of everyone repeating the exact same talking points over again. I'm glad you enjoyed it anyways. Thank you for participating, and I'll see you in the next one, Shadow Monarch. Have a lovely rest of your day. But you get what I'm saying, right? Quite frankly, I don't care whether my vote changes the scale. I don't care whether my vote is the deciding vote. I choose the vote that I believe in, that follows my moral compass. So let's bring another hypothetical. What if, before I voted, I was told by the game maker, whatever, by the true Kenjaku, that before you choose the vote, you should know. Half the people in the world have already voted. Or 80% of the people have already voted. And 60% voted red. In other words, the opposite of what Listchix presented. I'm presenting certainty that blue will not win. Do you pick red or blue? And this is kind of ridiculous. And I expect most people who pick blue to switch over at this point. But I think I would still pick blue. Because I don't think I would be able to live with myself if I picked red. Because I would know that is the wrong choice. I would know that is not what my heart tells me to do. Even if I know it's going to kill me, which is an extreme example, I would rather not be part of that whatever majority percent ends up being red that killed blue. Because it doesn't matter whether you were told blue's going to lose. You still put your feather on the scale. You still bear responsibility, some responsibility for blue dying. So I would pick blue even if I knew blue would not win. Because that's the only option I'll be able to live with myself picking. And guess what? If I can't live with myself picking red, how is that different from dying in blue? Minus the guilt. Ooh, Max Godard is extending this outside of the hypothetical into actual politics. What if you could convince someone else suddenly your power doubled? That's why politics exist. I've already made a difference. I've been told by other people that I've made a difference, and many people have made a difference to me. Yeah. Outside of this hypothetical and like actual politics, power does matter. Because we're not voting privately, right? I mean, when you're in the booth, you're private, but we can communicate and we can try to change each other's minds. Power does matter. In the specific hypothetical, power does not matter. Because everyone is voting privately, no one can talk to each other. All right, let's check. So what do we got here? You guys have useless weakness that makes you delusional. It is called accountability without consequences. This is guilt fucking your brains and has nothing to do with logic or of personal, my choice. I'm actually not going to comment on that. There's like no substance to actually comment on that, so I'm just going to leave it at that. Max Godard. Adri Gregan has made a difference to me. You're very kind. And so has Listchix too, to a certain extent. Oh, yeah, Dad, that last part. I used to be very angry at red voters. I still am to a certain extent, but Listchix doesn't anger me. I get you. Listchix, I was angry for about 4 minutes for the whole stream, and Max agrees. I appreciate that. And not just the part where he said he made a difference to me. I appreciate that sentiment. Because I used to be angry at red voters too. Hashtag me too. I don't think that's what that means, but it works. I've talked myself out of being angry with red. Because I've talked myself into realizing that there's nothing wrong with wanting to survive, wanting insurance, wanting to make it to the next day. So red doesn't anger me anymore, and I'm glad it doesn't anger you either. Neon Zombies. Survivor's guilt would hit me pretty hard, and like you said, I would rather make a good choice that kills me than a selfish one that compromises my beliefs but spares my life. 100%, yeah. Neon Zombies responding to Listchix, you're right, it is also a moral argument we're making. No one in their life makes purely logical decisions born out of knowledge. We trust and operate by our own sense of morality and truth. Yeah. Yeah. None of us are fully logical. None of us can be fully logical. All of us will have emotions, morality, influence our decisions at some point or another, whether we acknowledge it or not. The more we acknowledge it, the less we'll be blindsided by our decisions, by our subconscious, right? Sumnon has been frustrated, but for an entirely different reason this stream. I think I might get your point. However, like I said with Max, I am no longer frustrated by it, even though I was at the very beginning. I think I've been frustrated for maybe 2 minutes of this stream. I think that means I win. Listerjic says, you think you don't have accountability without real consequences? This is useless and not logical feeling. It's only moral argument you guys making. Well, there's nothing, what's wrong with the moral argument? But as for your first comment, you think you don't have accountability without real consequences. When did I say I don't have accountability without real consequences? All accountability has consequences by definition. I don't see how that relates to this hypothetical, though. Help me understand that, please. Help me understand that. I don't understand the connection you're making. In the meantime, I think we actually covered all of this. So I don't really have much left. I'm going to do what I definitely didn't do last stream and just leave it on here, as I think we can get close to wrapping things up. Unless you guys have more to say in the chat, because I think I've said my piece. Though I'd be more than happy debating Listerjic for another hour. Maybe not a full hour, because I think my Ritalin will run out, but... In the meantime, Neon Zombie says, it's not only a moral argument. It's not only a moral argument, it is a moral argument. Appealing logically to the idea that many will make uninformed decisions that will kill them, choosing to try to save them from their idiocy. Yeah. Sorry, my brain's stalling a little bit. I made a small mistake with having my tea, which is supposed to soothe my throat, also have caffeine in it. So my body is very confused currently with how much stimulation it has inside of it. And occasionally it's making my brain stall. But yeah. It is basically what I was saying in response to Listerjic. It's not just a moral argument, it is a moral argument. What is it about logical arguments that make them superior to moral arguments? There are benefits to each, but one certainly isn't better than the other one. Listerjic says it has extremely low chance in blue-red. Again, not sure what you're referring to. Please provide more context so I can respond to that properly. Mr. Light, shall I reiterate my alternative to the trolley problem? Oh yes, please do. I didn't see if you did it earlier. I might have just missed it. Oh, it's basically the same setup as trolley problem, yet doctors don't press the lever. Okay, so it's the trolley problem, but in the medical field, basically. It's like choosing life, whether doctors have a choice over life, which is, yeah, a whole other context. But that is a great point. Like, whether you do nothing, I don't know, it might be flipped, but it's the same idea. Whether you do nothing and let a life die, or whether you do nothing, let's say, and like have a comatose patient just keeping a vegetable, or whether you choose to kill them and end their life. I don't think that's exactly it. There's probably something about like a bunch of lives, like you can choose to press the lever and like maybe divert resources. So feel free to reiterate it in more detail, Mr. Light, so I can respond to it, but I think I see where you're coming from. The idea of the moral responsibility of doctors being different from like a citizen per se, over like not harming a life. And that does get things a little bit blurrier, but does still have the same spirit. In the meantime, Listerjic says, you guys are trying to invalidate my chance point by only moral arguments and logical ones is extremely hollow. Moral arguments worse than logical ones if you can make logical one. You're making an unsubstantiated claim that moral arguments are worse than logical ones if you can make a logical one. I'm going to need evidence that moral arguments are worse than logical ones, because that is not an axiom. That is not an established fact. So I need you to support that. Otherwise, I'm not going to play along with facts that you present as objective when I haven't seen any proof to that. Because right now I disagree. I do not think that moral arguments are worse than logical ones. I'm willing to be convinced, but I don't see that right now. Feel free to try to convince me. Living dog, I've gone away and went back, and we're still on List of Chicks, bro. Well, I don't know how long you were gone, but we did talk about the trolley problem. We did talk about a couple other things. As you can see, we're looking at my ugly mug currently, so we've done a couple other things. It's just that List of Chicks is the one thematic thread holding this whole stream together. Without List of Chicks, this thing would have been an hour long, so we should all thank him ourselves. Oh, Living Dog missed the trolley problem. Well, you didn't miss all of it because I think Mr. Light is currently typing away, reiterating the alternative to the trolley problem that involves doctors. You may or may not have heard it before. I don't think I have. But I'm excited to see it because I think I've got an idea what it's going to be like. So feel free to be in eager anticipation of that with me, Living Dog. Yan Zombies, I don't think moral arguments are inherently worse than logical ones. Moral objections are what we use against logical arguments of eugenics against crippled and intellectually deficient people. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Moral arguments are not inherently worse than logical ones. They cause a lot of, or they hold back a lot of atrocities from happening. Mr. Light, I already typed it. Maybe I didn't scroll back far enough. I saw the part where you mentioned that it's about doctors choosing whether or not to press the lever. Unless you're saying the alternative is literally just the exact same trolley problem, except the individual happens to be a doctor. And then it adds in the idea of, like, whether doctors have a moral responsibility to, like, do no harm, right? Actually, that might be what you're talking about. So if we go back to the trolley problem, you also missed this part, Living Dog, where I proved that I actually have the internet. I can look things up because I typed this out. If we go to the trolley problem here, and we say there is a, oh, Mr. Light is saying a lot of above arrows. Was it something before that? Or is that just a delayed response? Because the message I have before that is the doctor analogy presented in the good place. But I don't see details about the actual one. He doesn't listen, guys. What do you mean? Or are you talking to List of Chicks? The message just above the arrow. Oh, okay, okay. Many other people don't care about other people's morals. Okay, cool. You're not talking about me. I was about to go into the freaking crisis. Like, what do you mean I'm not listening? I'm presenting it. Okay, you're just talking about that one. Add the @ man. You're giving me a freaking crisis here. And zombies, and that's fine. Your intellectual arguments hold value to me. Does not override the value of the moral. Yeah, perfect. No, your message. Mr. Light, I'm confused. I'm looking at your messages. You have the above arrow. I already typed it. Above it, shall I try to reiterate the alternative to the trolley problem? Unless, I think I might be seeing what happened. I think your message, you probably typed out a reiteration of it. And it might have been, like, called out by spam and been deleted. Yeah, I'm even looking at the live chat as opposed to the top chat, and it's not showing up here. So it might have been auto-filtered for, like, spam or something. So if you can, like, try to rephrase it, I don't know why it got auto-deleted, but that's probably what happened. So we're probably living in two different realities right now, and we're both talking past each other. So while you're typing that out, I'm going to address the hypothetical that you're apparently not bringing up, but one that I think is interesting anyways. Trolley problem with the stipulation of you happen to be a doctor, and you're in front of the lever. Because even if this isn't what you're talking about, I think this is also interesting and worth talking about. Because doctors make a vow, right? To do no harm. So on one hand, as a human, you have a moral responsibility to pull the lever, right? To save more human lives. However, as a doctor, you have an obligation to do no harm. By pulling that lever, you are taking a direct action that kills that person. Exactly, Living Dog, the Hippocratic Oath. You can't pull the lever because pulling it is taking a direct action to end a life. do a lot more than hurting a life. Which begs the question, which wins out? Your moral obligation to save human lives? Or your Hippocratic oath to do no harm? Two conflicting obligations. That's really interesting. That's really interesting, actually. You can just cross your fingers while saying it. So if you ever walk into a trolley problem, you can do it. Oh my god, imagine that. You took the Hippocratic Oath. Oh yeah? My fingers were crushed. And then you just do whatever you want. You're chilling. Oh my god, the oldest trick in the book. Cried my fingers crossed the entire time. Absolutely legendary living dog. Absolutely legendary. I think he just won. I think he just defeated the Hippocratic Oath. Neon zombies would personally sacrifice my career and vow for multiple lives. My oath is worth a lot, but human lives are worth more. Okay, this conversation is getting really interesting again. I'm glad it didn't end it at the 3-hour mark. I'm glad we got to this point, because this is really interesting. So Neon Zombies is saying he would sacrifice his career and vow to save lives. My oath is worth a lot, but human lives are worth more. The reason this is so interesting to me is because several things flashed in my head as soon as you said that. I'm sorry, Mr. Light, you can't post your message. Try like posting it in little bits or like rephrasing it or something like that, because auto censor can be really weird sometimes. I genuinely have no idea. I have nothing actually set for it, so it's just YouTube's basic auto censor in my live chat. Probably. Yeah, there's probably a banned word in it or something. I couldn't tell you though. So about Neon Zombies' point, human lives are worth more, right? I think that's a great view to have. What's so interesting about this, one of the parts that makes it so interesting, is the fact that the Hippocratic Oath doesn't exist in a void, right? There is a reason for the Hippocratic Oath. For the sake of protecting human lives and not causing undue suffering, right? So they're both about protecting human lives. Are you going to protect 1 life or 5 lives? So I think in that sense, I agree with you, Neon Zombies. I think you should override your Hippocratic Oath because you can break it down into fundamental reasons. In the same line of logic that pretty much everyone drives above the speed limit on the freeway, right? We drive above the speed limit because we know the reason behind the rule of speed limits not breaking them. And we agree that it is safer to drive at the speed of everyone else faster than the speed limit than it is to follow the law. You should follow the law for the reasons the law exists, not just because it's the law, right? Applying that to the Hippocratic Oath and the trolley problem, if you're stuck between having the moral responsibility of pulling the lever and having the Hippocratic Oath of not doing anything, well, we need to undo this contradiction. So let's take the Hippocratic Oath and look behind it, just like how we look at the law of speeding. Let's look behind the Hippocratic Oath. It's about protecting life, right? It's about not harming people. It's the same idea. It is a moral obligation, just like pulling the lever to save the 5 people. All of a sudden, once you get rid of the fancy proper noun of Hippocratic Oath, all you're doing is comparing 2 ideas, 2 desires to save and conserve human life. Now you just have to choose whether you conserve 1 life or 5 lives. Boom. You broke your vow to the Hippocratic Oath. Yes, but I followed the soul of it, the heart of it, which is preserving life. So I think once you start taking part like that, it becomes much easier to override the Hippocratic Oath. And I would agree with you that the doctor has more of a responsibility to pull the lever. Because at the end of the day, it's about protecting human life, preserving human life. Yes, living dog, you follow the principle of the rules instead of the rules. You don't follow the Hippocratic Oath because it's the Hippocratic Oath. You shouldn't follow the Hippocratic Oath because the Hippocratic Oath. You should follow it because it is a guideline for preserving human life. So if you have to break it in order to preserve more human life, you are following the principle of the rules, exactly. Don't worry, Mr. Light, for not listening in. I don't think it's been addressed. Let me actually look at your... Okay, yeah, you actually got it through. You're a doctor and you need to unalive one healthy person to harvest their organs in order to save 5. Yeah, okay, it's this one. So you need to end one person's life in order to get the required organs to save 5 others. And I think I've slightly addressed it to a degree. But I think this extends beyond the Hippocratic Oath. Much like the trolley problem, the doctor in the trolley problem, I think your Hippocratic Oath can be broken down into preserving life, right? Do you preserve the 1 life, or do you preserve the 5 lives by harvesting the organs of the 1 healthy person? Well, breaking down the Hippocratic Oath, we once again get the preserving lives. If you kill that person, if you unalive that person, you are directly responsible for their life ending. You violated the Hippocratic Oath. If you do nothing and the 5 people who need organs die, you didn't violate the oath. However, you violated the principle of it, which is preserving life. So just like the trolley problem, I think your obligation to preserve human life, the principle of the Hippocratic Oath, ironically obligates you to break the oath and harvest the organs. Now, it's far from that cut and dry, right? I'm not saying the right answer is to harvest the organs and kill the person. Because once you declare that is the right answer, all of a sudden you open up a Pandora's box of issues. And you probably become a terrorist, right? Because all of a sudden you start advocating for you start advocating for a lot of crazy things. We should kill off you start advocating for things like eugenics, for things like fascism, for things like, let's see how many buzzwords I can shout out before YouTube cuts off the stream. But you get the point, right? You start advocating for all these crazy things once you start saying, my job is to preserve human life, so I'm going to kill these minorities to save the majority. I think the best response to that is that things like terrorism and all this crazy stuff is not an immediate danger, whereas here, like with the trolley problem, there's an immediate threat to lives, and with the doctor, there's an immediate threat to lives. So they're not exactly the same, but it is a very slippery slope, which is why I will not say it's the correct answer to unalive the healthy person for the organs, but it is what I would do, right? I think the Hippocratic Oath does take into account the do not harm, so the moral decision has already been made when taking the oath in principle. Yeah, do no harm, right? It's not simply about not killing people, it's about doing no harm. But killing people is part of harming them. I think we can all agree on that. So basically, it's still the same idea. Yeah, Max Godard is trying to open up a whole different can of worms. This is precisely the reason why I'll always back up the right to abort. Now, how can I comment on this in the least incendiary way possible? I think by doing what I do best. Using my knowledge of verbiage and of English language to dance around the point. I would not say this is not the reason why I would back up abortion. There's another buzzword. YouTube, you listening? They're not. We're still live. Cool. I would back up the right to abort not because I think there is like a choice of like preserving life, but simply because I think it is very arrogant of me as a man who cannot abort to choose whether others can abort. There. The can of worms is empty. I'm sorry to make it that simple of an issue, but it's that simple of an issue. And if you want me to make a separate political channel where I boil down these complex societal issues to single sentences that are ridiculously simple but true, I'll do that for you. But that's honestly all I got on abortion. It's that cut and dry. Oh, but religion. Oh, what about the life of the baby? I do not care. I cannot abort. I will not choose whether other people can abort. That's stupid. End of story. That's the entire debate from my perspective. That's literally all it is. That's the start and the end of it. Feel more than right to disagree with me in the comments, and I'll gladly engage with you in discussion. But as it stands, that's all I've got on that. That's the start and the end of it. It's that simple. It's that simple. Oh man, Neon Zombies pointing out the elephant in the room. Tread carefully. I think I can smell Susan in the chat right now on the ban channel button. And no, Neon Zombies, I did not just call you an elephant. That was in your head. Max Godard, people use human rights to attack pro-choice arguments, ignoring the fact that human rights exist to protect and help sentient humans reach a better tomorrow. So yeah, Max, you can break this down and like try to get into the weeds and say whether babies are sentient, right? At one point they become sentient. You can throw religion and spirituality into it. When does a soul go into a body? At what point does a collection of cells become a living thing? You can do all these different things. But I think all of that is kind of just a distraction. It's a distraction from the fact that people are trying to decide what other people can do with their bodies. And I just find that ridiculous, and I find that disgusting. And even though recently, this is something I can only say in the live stream, as I bring out a little bit of my personal political views, even though I've been leaning less and less progressive as time goes on, I wouldn't say I'm becoming conservative by any stretch of the imaginations, but I'm agreeing with a lot less of like progressive ideas as progressivism gets more and more extreme and ridiculous and crazy and throws away the past. Despite that, I really think we're making the abortion argument so much more complicated than it needs to be. The entire debate, the entire pro-life argument is trying to distract you from the fact that people are trying to decide what other people should be able to do. Which is just the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Like, why are we not stopping the debate there? I don't know. It's just ridiculous. I don't think we can extend this stream very long by talking about abortion because I really don't have much to say about it. I don't think there's that much to say about it. Why are you deciding what other people have a right to do with their body? I don't have more to say about it than that. I'm sorry. It's just that simple. I'm probably the last person you expect to say something like it's just that simple, but it really just is that simple. At the end of the day. This chick's giving birth is a decision. What will decide what the other people do? I think you mean. I think what you're trying to say is that like other people should decide, like they should decide whether they give birth or not. That's their decision. I think you're agreeing with me, and if so, then yeah, we agree with it. We're in agreement in there. You should decide what you do with your body. You should decide if you give birth or not. End of story. Stop making this a social issue. It's not a social issue. It's just not. You're just placing yourself where you don't belong. Yes, but by abstaining, you're aligning yourself with the majority so you can take the right of others away from them depending on where you live. I'm not sure who you're referring to with that, Mr. Light. I don't know if you're responding to me or not. If you are, I'm not abstaining. I told you my position. Pro-choice. Because it's not my choice to decide whether you have a choice or not. I'm not abstaining. I'm fully in the pro-choice camp. I am not abstaining at all, if that was for me. Neon Zombies, to be fair, I think that comes up with you shouldn't be allowed to use your body to kill another human being, hence why murder is illegal. That goes back to the sentience life argument. Here's the thing. On one hand, yes, I agree with you. I should predicate that with that. Yes. Some people see abortion as murder, and that's the biggest argument to being like, oh, it's not that simple, because then you legalize murder. My response to that is actually not about whether babies are sentient and when life gains sentience and whether sentience is a predication to like whether things should live or not. It's a lot simpler than that. If you have a baby inside of you and it cannot survive outside of you, not counting mechanics and tubes and like, scientific intervention, if it cannot survive outside of you, it is not murder to kill it. Just like how, bringing things back to the trolley problem, because everything in this channel goes full circle, you cannot be charged with murder for these 5 people by not pulling the lever. If there is a baby inside of you, and it cannot survive outside of you, killing it is not murder. It is entirely dependent on you. It is entirely your choice. And I use that word carefully because I know dependent is like also like children who are legally dependent on you. That is different. Legally versus medically dependent. Now, if you really want to poke holes in my argument and say, oh, but now we need to analyze whether the baby can survive outside of the womb, at that point, you've just lost the plot. I don't care. It's not that deep. It's not that deep. Just have it be after like birth. You can't kill the baby after birth, right? Because abortion is before birth by definition. Just have that be the line. Why is this so hard? People want too badly to make this moral, make this about human life. When I think it's so much simpler than that. It's that baby cannot survive outside of you without like medical intervention. And that's where I'm making the distinction. I realized I didn't say this out loud. Obviously, once the baby is like born normally, it can't survive on its own, right? But that is not medical necessity. That is social necessity, right? It needs other people to take care of it. By the way, if you didn't know, the reason why humans are unusual and like their babies are completely dependent on their children is because we have to eject them out of our bodies. I don't know why I said it like that. We have to give birth before they're developed enough to survive on their own, because otherwise they wouldn't fit through us because our skulls are too big. So, little fun fact for you there. But I'm making a distinction between medical necessity or medical dependence and, I guess, physical dependence. If the baby medically cannot survive on its own, it's not really its own life form. Addressing Listochik's point, if you leave an 8-year-old child in the cold snow, he can't survive on his own. That is a physical necessity, not a medical one. I know that's not the perfect like terminology, but I hope my idea is coming through here. And as for Listochik's earlier point, because Listochik can't go 5 seconds without being the main antagonist of this stream. Oh my god, I'm not agreeing. I'm saying that parents deciding life for their children, it should be wrong for you, but it's not. Children, people. Listochik, I'm afraid you are putting words in my mouth. Please stop doing that. I did not say that it's okay for parents to decide life for their children. So don't put words in my mouth, kindly. I won't fucking stand for that. Children that have been born are not medically dependent on their mother, nor technology that mimics the mother. They are physically dependent on others because they can't take care of themselves, but they are not medically dependent. They do not literally require resources to be fed through a tube. Whether that tube is, the umbilical cord, or whether it's the imitation of the umbilical cord. That's what I mean by medical dependence. right? As long as it's medically dependent on you, you have every right to choose to end that life. Because you are responsible for it being alive at all. Once it's no longer medically dependent, you can no longer make that choice. Cut and dry. Mostly. Yeah, Max Bedard, referring to the trolley problem. Choosing not to donate an organ to a person who died without does not make you a murderer. Yeah. You are not a murderer because you choose not to donate your organ to save another life. There are not two types of people in this world, saviors and murderers. Martyrs and murderers. Ooh, that would be a great book name. Martyrs and murderers. There are more than those two types of people in the world, right? Obviously. Neon zombies. Right, I don't think there's a legal argument for it. I do think maybe there's a moral culpability for choosing to kill it and not take on that burden, but I can't truly pass judgment because I'm a man. The moral culpability ultimately only lies with that particular woman, and if she can live with it, then I am in no position to say otherwise, even if I naively disagree with it. Neon zombies, I need you to get out of my head, because your second comment addressed exactly what I was going to respond with. Exactly. I don't want my defense of pro-choice to mean that I don't think women should, or mothers who abort, should not feel guilty. In the same way that if you put down a dog, you should feel pretty guilty about that, right? You should feel bad about that. Maybe not guilty, but you should feel bad. You should feel responsibility for that. I think you should have the full right to abort, but you should also feel responsibility for that because you did end a life. You did make choices that caused you to become pregnant. Not always. Obviously, there's exceptions. There's all those terrible things I really won't say on here. But at some point, you do bear some responsibility for that abortion. That's true. But as we both agree, that plays no part in whether it should be legal or not. That's ridiculous. Lista Chicks is asking why medical dependents should decide. Ooh, excuse me. Why medical dependents would decide whether you abort or not. So Lista Chicks is asking why I say my qualifiers, whether they are medically dependent or not. And I feel like I've already explained that, but let me try explaining it another way so you understand. Because if they are medically dependent, if they require your umbilical cord to be alive, then you are actively sapping your resources, worsening your life, so that they can survive. This is going to sound callous, because it is, but it's just scientifically true. In that sense, there is very little distinction between a baby that is feeding through your umbilical cord and a fungus feeding off of a tree, or a cancer growing in your body, or a parasite growing in your body. If you say you don't have the right to end the life of something that is dependent on you medically, then you should also say you have a right, you do not have a right to kill that parasite living in you that is dependent on you. Now, that's where the analogy falls apart a little bit, because that parasite isn't medically dependent on you, it's physically dependent on you. But I believe that medical dependence is an absolute qualifier. If something's medically dependent on you, you have every right to end that life. You have just as much of a right to feel responsible for ending a life. Doesn't mean if you should feel guilty or feel bad or feel regret. You should feel some responsibility for ending a life. But you have every right to do it because that thing is dependent on you. It cannot survive without your umbilical cord. It is a part of you. That's why, Lista Chicks. And just to respond to your other comment, by not having sex without protection, you depriving human of right to live. But again, that's by not acting, right? By not putting on protection, you're depriving human of right to live. I can extend that logic. By not having sex, you're depriving humans of being born. You're not guilty by the things you don't do. Sure, you can bear some responsibility. If I never have children, I bear some responsibility for humanity not increasing in population slightly more than it would have without if I had had children. I bear some responsibility, but I am not guilty. And I think that's a good segue into what Max Godard responded. Finally happy about a disagreement between us. I believe abortion should be by no means be cause for grief in any way, shape, or form. People have the right to feel however they want, but there is no objective reason. Yeah. I hate to disappoint you after you were so excited, Max. I hate to do this to you. I'm sorry to do this to you. But we actually don't have a disagreement. We actually don't. We actually don't. Because as I just said, like, since you posted that comment, I'm not saying, oh, Lissa Chicks is heading out. Man, the stream's gonna end soon then. All right, take care, Lissa Chicks. I appreciate you being here. You had a lot of liveliness and fun and a lot of interesting nuance to this take, so I appreciate you, and until the next one, have a lovely rest of your day, Lissa Chicks. Hope to see you in the next one. So, Max, we actually don't disagree at all. Sorry, I had to put the truth back on the screen. Because I don't believe abortion should be a cause for grief. I do think it should cause some responsibility. The same way that I feel some responsibility, even if I think Lissa Chicks is gone, so he probably can't hear this part where I'm agreeing with him. You feel an infinitesimally small responsibility when you step on an ant, right? Because you ended a life. Does that mean you feel grief? Maybe, but probably not. In the same way, if you abort, you should feel responsibility for ending a life because you did. You ended a life you had every right to do. You should feel responsibility. You should not necessarily feel grief. So I don't think you heard wrong. I think I just needed to be a little more semantic. But I think we agree. Unless you think that there is no responsibility someone should have over carrying abortion, in which case we will disagree. Because I do think that regardless of whether you have a right to or not, that is ending a life, right? It's ending a life medically dependent on you, so you have every right to do it, but it is ending a life. Anyways, that's my stance on that, basically. Well, responsibility has no color. If I filled ice plastics with water, then I'm responsible for us having ice cubes now. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Responsibility has this connotation that it's a bad thing, right? Same thing with consequences. This is something real fun I learned like a decade ago. The idea that consequences aren't necessarily bad, right? There's such a thing as good consequences. And there's such a thing about feeling responsibility that is not negative. I feel responsibility running this channel. I feel a lot more responsibility now that Max Godard says I've affected him. I've changed his mind about something. I feel a lot of responsibility because I can actually change minds. Me rambling up here for four godforsaken hours on a Sunday is actually potentially affecting people's minds. Now I feel a lot of responsibility. Is it bad? Do I feel grief? A little bit. I'm sorry for your loss, but no. Responsibility is not a bad thing inherently. So yeah, if you abort, you should feel responsibility for ending a life. That does not mean you should feel bad or feel guilty or feel sorrowful about it. You can. There's nothing wrong with it. You had every right to do it. But you should feel responsibility. And I think all of us, and it looks like at least the two of us, me and Max, are in agreement there. The ice economy of this house is everyone's responsibility, exactly. And responsibility is also not a zero-sum game, right? Everyone can feel responsibility. Yeah, everyone can feel equal responsibility. And I think that's also true. All right, anyone else have any hot takes about abortion or any crazy thing we needed to go off on? Or are we going to keep all of our streams under 4 hours? I'm fine with either one. Max, just as you should feel responsible when picking an apple from a tree. I think we're about good here. I think we've said our piece. I think this is approaching the upper end of our streams. I don't think we've broken 4 hours yet, so maybe we'll save that for an achievement for the future. So I'm going to start doing my wrap up, and if someone says some unhinged thing in the chat, then we'll branch off and I'll do another ending thing, but I'm going to start ending off here. Some Unfinished art. Can't wait to see that in Discord. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all for being here, whether you're live or whether you are watching it in the VOD. I really appreciate you hearing my thoughts, my objective personal thoughts on these matters. It's a lot of fun, and I really appreciate it. I hope you're having as much fun as I am, because I am. I hope your voice is less sore than mine is, because it's quite sore. But it's absolutely worth it. This responsibility is not bad at all. So thank you so much for watching. I haven't decided what I'm going to do the next stream about. We will see how that was going to work. I'll figure that out and make a post later probably about what the next stream will be. Maybe this will be my narcissistic stream about my book. We'll see. But we're kind of out of the woodworks of like the things we had planned for these streams. So we're kind of open and free from here. So it's a brand new world we're stepping into. I hope you're excited for it. Neon was going to say something unhinged and say that waffles are better than pancakes 9 out of 10 times. Well, you can't say you were going to say something unhinged, make the joke that you said something unhinged anyways, and then say something that's just factually correct. Neon Zombies, I don't think you know how that joke works. Try again later. Max Godard, this is like the third time you've opened your live while I'm on a date, so I have to wait to go home to get to it. Really? Well, first of all, stop having your dates on Sunday. You should be forming your life around my streams, not your love life. You should know better, Max. But also, congratulations, man. I'm glad to hear you're going on dates. That's awesome. I hope they're going well for you, and I hope it keeps going well for you. That's super awesome. All the best. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here. I hope you look forward to the next one, whatever it'll be. Join my Discord if you haven't already. Obviously, everyone here has. Oh, Mom is here, right as I'm ending. And she's stepping out. Okay. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for watching. I hope to see you in the next one. And until then, have a lovely rest of your day.